Man, what is the wildest thing a woman has ever done to gain your attention? There was one girl that worked at the gym I go to. She was really nice and we talked pretty often. One day I stayed until she was about to close the gym, and just before she closed she said she needed to do stretches because she had a dance class the next day. She invited me to do the stretches with her. I thought she meant me just helping her, like pushing her down or lifting and holding her, just being of assistance to her. Instead she wanted me to do them with her, as in do the stretches myself. Now, she's a semi-professional dancer practicing modern dance. Her stretches are not human, not something I can even think of doing. So I bite the bullet and do them anyway because why not? She's nice and it's kinda funny toppling over every time I try to do something. Anyway, at some point we were to do one of those stretches where you sit down, put the soles of your feet up against each other, pull them as close to your body as you can while still keeping them on the floor, and then push your knees down while bending forward. After toppling over a couple times I managed to get stable and actually do it, but I can't get my knees very low because I am stiff and have shortened tendons in my legs. She laughs, literally rolling on the floor crying from laughter. So to help me she gets up behind me, mounts me, literally climbs on my back, spreads her legs around my ribs and starts pushing down my knees with her own knees. All she had to do was stand in front of me and push my knees down with her palms, but instead of doing that she saddles me like a horse. She ends up falling over me and I grab her as she's falling over so she doesn't hit the ground face first. It ends up looking like one of those cringe cliché anime moments. She fell on her back and I fell on top of her with my hands around her. Safe to say I had a hard time keeping my composure because she's really good looking, being a dancer and all. It really didn't feel crazy at the time. I found it pretty cute honestly. We ended up having an impromptu date that night. When I asked her why on earth would she mount me like that, she said that she just wanted a reason to climb on me. We're still together and to this day I still tease her about it, and she still keeps climbing on top of me.
My deadbeat husband ruined our life by putting us in crippling debt and won't pay child support. So I reported him to the IRS for tax evasion. I am a 40-year-old woman who has been married to my husband for over 20 years. He is a hard-working man with a six-figure income, but manages money so poorly that he's put us in horrible debt. I have always been a traditional woman and allowed my husband to handle the finances, but he spent years living a lavish life and racking up debt without telling me. My husband buys himself expensive watches, Armani suits, and even came home one day with a brand new Porsche. Now we are well over $70,000 in credit card debt and he does not seem to feel it is a problem and even asked me to pick up an extra job to help pay the mortgage and pay off some of his debt. One night, he came home late from drinking with his work friends. I was packing lunches for the kids while finishing up a meeting call and my husband walked in with a brand new 77-inch television for his den. I tried to keep my composure, but we ended up getting into a heated discussion about his inability to manage money, and how we need a financial advisor to help us with our debt. He immediately got defensive and claimed that I was trying to emasculate him by questioning our finances. When I told him I was trying to figure out the best solutions for us, he said that it was not my job and that I needed to focus on taking care of the house and doing woman things. I said, I wouldn't have to worry about doing man things if he handled his job as a man. That comment set him off the deep end and he demanded a separation because he was not going to be in a house where his wife disrespects him. When I explained that he would be stupid to divorce me since he can barely pay his bills now and will have to pay child support if we got divorced, he laughed at me. You would not believe what he did next. My husband quit his job and started working as a contractor, getting paid under the table and reporting close to nothing for income, so I would then have to pay him for child support. So I reported him to the IRS for tax evasion, and the last I heard he was being audited by the government. They took his car and all his expensive possessions and is now looking at 15 months in prison.
Have you ever been denied during your proposal? Why? 8 years ago. It's been 8 years. We had known each other for 5 years, dated for 3.5. Every single day I saw her was the best day of my life. We met while working at a pizza chain and had gotten close at work. I eventually worked up the courage to ask her out even though it was awfully frowned upon as she was a driver and I was a manager. She said yes and we went to a party together and literally didn't talk to a single other soul that night. I was hooked. We dated for a year and then moved in together. I can still see her face perfectly, even that long ago. Her family was wonderful, her father an esteemed professor at a nearby college and her mother was a cancer survivor with a heart of gold. Everything just seemed to fit. And I knew that I wanted to be with her forever. After dating for 3 years, I finally popped the question. I had set up a normal night in, ordered a pizza and had a nice little night in. We had a cat, Triumph, a nice little apartment, and the whole shebang. I had tied a little pillow with the ring on to try and sat her in the other room while my lady was in the bathroom. When she got back, I called for the cat and she came in, pillow and all on her back. I proposed and she burst into tears, saying she was sorry and ran out of the apartment. I tried desperately to reach her, through family, friends, any way imaginable. I finally heard back from her sister after 3 days. Her entire family knew and I was apparently the only person out of the loop. She was diagnosed with a very aggressive terminal brain cancer, just 3 days prior to me proposing. I was gutted. For so many reasons, but I could understand why she didn't tell me. After I had proposed, she told her sister that she had decided not to put me through that, but I didn't care. I would have stayed with her to the end of the earth. I tried night and day to contact her to no avail. She died just 5 weeks after I had proposed. I have never felt more lost and alone than I did at her funeral. Her family were very comforting, but I began to hate myself. Thinking that it was something that I had done to scare her away, making her believe that I would leave her if she told me when it couldn't have been further from the truth. I went into a deep depression for a very long time afterwards. I drank and did drugs, day and night. Went from job to job, not showing up for days on end. I dropped out of school, lost a lot of my friends. Considered ending my life a few times. I know now that she kept it from me to try and save me the grief of losing her. But there's nothing in the world I wouldn't give to go back in time. Just to hear her say yes. Try to steal my legally rented parking spot? Enjoy being unemployed. I am a professional driver. As such, on the roads in the U.S., there are different truck stops throughout the country that have a pay-to-park system, usually about 10 to 20% of the lot marked off as reserved, with each space running from $15 to $25. The truck stop where this took place had parking for $17, which is relatively cheap, for a guaranteed spot. The spots are reserved for 24 hours, starting at 4 p.m. local time, and extending to 3 p.m. the following afternoon. I knew that I would have a late night delivery, so I came to the truck stop around 3:30, and paid for a reserve spot. I told the manager on duty that I had a delivery up the road that night, and would be back, once delivery was completed, but should still be able to clear out the spot by the next afternoon. She told me that this was okay, and she would mark the spot as sold when I left. That way, if someone else comes in trying to reserve that spot, she could consult her notes, and deny the sale. 11:15 p.m. rolls around, I take off for my delivery. I don't get out of that facility until 2:30 a.m. the next morning. So, I groggily drive back to the truck stop to reclaim my paid-for spot, only to find that the reserved parking spaces are all full. I call the manager on duty, and after giving her my info, inform her that all the spots are full, and that someone has parked in a spot and hasn't paid for it. She sends her other employee out to start checking trucks. The culprit was from a company that is known for their bright orange trailers, and he was a company driver. The other employee starts banging on his door to inform him that he is parked illegally, and he has to move. Meanwhile, I can see the commotion from my mirror, with my vantage point in the fuel island, where I had been instructed to temporarily park. The driver answers the door with a bottle of Heineken in one hand, and some sort of smoking implement in another. I decided to roll down the window to hear the commotion, and I hear the employee tell the driver to either move, or he will get the towing company and police involved. This driver is flat out irate that someone had the audacity to tell him where he can and cannot park, so he slams the door on the employee, threatening him. Employee calls the police and tow company, and the police show up first. I had worked for this company before, so I know their policies, and more importantly, what they can and cannot have in their trucks. Alcoholic beverages are not allowed in the cab. Anything that isn't a cigarette or a cigar and a lighter, also not allowed. The coup de grace, a pew-pew, of any kind, absolutely not allowed, and especially not allowed loaded. This driver had all that, and some other not-so-legal substances in his cab, so he was hauled away in cuffs. His truck was hauled away on a wrecker. I made a call after the commotion died down to the company's safety director, and informed them that their rig will be in an impound lot, and their driver is going to jail over the not-so-legal stuff he had in his truck. She thanked me, and said that he will definitely lose his job, especially over the alcohol and the other not-so-legal stuff. I guess he played the screw around and find out card, and it bit him in his career. My boyfriend disappeared on me and the stress is starting to become unbearable. So the last time I, 20, came running to this subreddit for help, it was because my so is too ambitious and successful and it was starting to stress me out. Man, I would give anything to trade that stress in for what's going on now. The last time I spoke to my so, Jorg, was literally that morning. He went from a wonderful boyfriend who would call me, via Skype, multiple times a day just to say hi and ask how I am, to suddenly nothing. I figured it was because he was busy and off doing some sort of time-consuming project, but over the course of the last week, the situation has only gotten weirder and weirder. I didn't hear from him all day Saturday, or Sunday, or Monday, and then I woke up to this on Tuesday morning. My brother wanted to say sorry and that he has no access to social media. Of course, that definitely, temporarily, assuaged my worries, and I sent a cheery message back saying, "Okay, thanks for the update, please tell Jorg that I love him and miss him." No response. Whatever, it's his kid brother. Teenagers are too cool these days for anything sentimental anyway. Tuesday, no word from my boyfriend. Wednesday, none either. Thursday, still none. At this point, I'm getting sketched out because Jorg not only has to go to the uni regularly in order to write his dissertation, but on Thursdays and Fridays, he has an internship at a law firm in Dusseldorf. To believe that he doesn't have access to internet is like believing in chocolate-covered unicorns. So I sent back another message to Marco to try and get some more information. 4 to 6 weeks? What do you mean, 4 to 6 weeks? In fact, if he can't contact me for 4 to 6 weeks, especially since we're in an international LDR, how the hell am I supposed to believe I still have a boyfriend, let alone expect him to visit me over winter break in Florida, conveniently also in 4 to 6 weeks? At this time, I received a message from Jorg's friend in London asking if I had heard from him at all. He told me he had been trying to contact Jorg for the past week but got no response. I clung to that little sliver of information, because at least now I knew I wasn't the only one left in the dark about my boyfriend. We chatted back and forth a little bit, and his friend promised to keep me updated if he heard anything. The stress of all this worry and not knowing has only led me to believe in these possibilities. Jorg is dead or dying on his deathbed somewhere, i.e. an old school hospital with no Wi-Fi. Jorg is in rehab, but for what? Granted, he's German so he drinks a lot of beer, but he doesn't smoke or do drugs. Jorg is off in some sabbatical enlightenment camping trip in Tibet or some other third world country, but why wouldn't anyone say something to me about that? Jorg met another girl and is too weak to tell me. His friend not knowing where he is either makes this seem not too likely. Jorg is in jail. Oh god, Jorg is a serial unaliver. Makes sense actually. He's charming, good looking, ambitious, and really smart. Ha, Jorg is a CIA agent working undercover for the German government and is recently in some top secret project that only his immediate family knows about. Jorg got kidnapped by aliens. The last I heard from Marco, Jorg's younger brother, basically reinforced my idea that there's something strange going on and people are purposely withholding information. Also, I got this final message from his London friend yesterday morning. I've been having all sorts of horrible nightmares of losing my boyfriend, such as me trying to talk to him but he can't hear me no matter how loudly I scream, or me waiting for him the entire dream but he never shows up, or me reaching out to him but he keeps moving farther and farther away. The stress of not knowing where he is sucks. Employers and managers who had to fire their best employee, what happened? Had a guy who would work his ass off daily inputting data into spreadsheets. Would come in, put in solid hours of actual work, not goofing off. He would literally get 4 times as much stuff done a week as anyone else in the office. After 3 weeks straight of this, other people start to take notice and occasionally ask him to help them out when they are behind, and he obliges. This gets worse and worse, and eventually people are basically just walking all over him while they spend all day Facebooking and whatnot, because he won't say no if they ask him to help with their work. The dude just keeps trucking through though. About 4 months into working there, it's gotten to the point where you can hear the extra cunty girls talking about leaving early and not getting in trouble because he will just do all the work for us if we ask anyway. Well, the guy goes into the boss's office, and I work right next to it so I can hear more or less the entire conversation. I am paraphrasing, but it went something like this. I would like a raise, I am doing way too much work for how much I am getting paid. Everyone else who works here is so damn lazy, I even have people making jokes about how I will do their work for them and they will get paid for it. Well, name, I can sympathize with you, but you have to understand, I can't just give you a raise. If I give you a raise I would have to explain to everyone why you got a raise and they didn't. You could tell them it's because I am doing half of their work for them while they look at stupid memes. I'm sorry, name, it just wouldn't work out well. Well then, is there any positions available above mine that I could apply for a promotion to? I don't think we can really look into a promotion this early into you working here. We would need time to properly evaluate your work ethic. Seriously. You seriously just said that to me. I'm not going to break my back doing it. Entire offices work for a company that doesn't give 2 shits about me. You and this entire office can go F themselves. He walks out of the office fuming mad and yells, "Hey everyone, boss, just denied my raise, so no more leaving work early for any of you lazy F heads, cause I effing quit."
My boyfriend laid hands on me, so I told his mom. I should have listened to my friend all along. My boyfriend and I have not been having a good time lately. We fights all the time over minuscule stuff. Our intimacy life feels forced. He makes me have intimacy when I don't want to. I yell at him over nothing, etc. Either way, things really escalated last Friday night. We were staying at one of our friends' apartments and we drank too much alcohol. We had discussions about hot topics which turned heated very quickly. We were watching TV with some friends, and the TV show was talking about this married politician who asked his 2 female coworkers to have a 3-way with him. My boyfriend said that this man did nothing wrong and that love is free and that he's envious of poly people because they are more open-minded. He went on to strongly hint he wants a poly relationship himself. With the conversation going on, he said that his friends are more important to him than women, because they stay loyal, and that our love was nothing special and could possibly end. I felt humiliated in front of our friends. We went home and kept fighting. When he said to me, "You're effing stupid, you don't understand anything, you dumb F," after I was expressing my overall disappointment, I had enough and slapped him. I made a mistake. He started slapping me too, with much more power, and I started crying. Then he proceeded to put me in a rear neck hold, smash a plate over my head and throw a few haymakers at my ribs. I think he broke a rib or 2. After doing all of this, he saw me on the ground and started booting me. That way he tossed me on the ground outside the door, with all my stuff, saying I had to go away. I was drunk and it was 3 a.m. I asked a friend if I could crash at his place that was nearby and he said yes. Yesterday my boyfriend wrote a message to me saying that it's all over, that he's tired of me and this is not what he wants from a relationship, but I feel so bad, lonely and hurt. I feel like I started this fight. I also lost my best friend in the process because she was trying to keep me away from him. She told me that he had roped her in the past and that he is a violent man, but I didn't listen. I suppose now I pay the price. That evening I blasted him on social media and told his mom. I made sure judge didn't give him a good sentence either.
My husband wishes death on my baby. My husband curses our baby out when no one's around. My husband and I, both 30s, had a baby girl in September. We wanted to become parents and he was over the moon when I told him I was pregnant. Ever since she was born he's been super involved. He longs for any opportunity to hold or feed her. He's the one bathing her in the evening as part of her bedtime routine. We have a baby monitor that we usually turn on once she's asleep. Yesterday, while he put her to bed and sat next to her crib, I was hanging out in the living room when I heard some talking and realized the baby monitor was on. The volume was quite low, so I couldn't make out the words at first, but when I turned it up I froze. What I listened to was my husband talking to our baby, basically insulting her and cursing her out. This sweet man sat next to the crib saying things like, "I hate you so much you have no idea. That's right, you heard me, you little effer." I don't want this to be deleted so I won't go into too much detail, but what the hell? He was almost whispering and didn't say any of it in a cute way at all, just sort of monotone. It's not like him at all. He even said that he wishes our baby would just die already and we would be so much better without her. I heard some grunts afterwards and then silence. When he came to join me in the living room, I asked him if everything was alright, without mentioning what I heard, and he was completely normal, the sweetest guy. So tonight I turned the baby monitor on ahead of time purposefully to listen in on them again, and he did it again. I'm so confused, the way he speaks to our baby is horrifying. I'm scared he's hurting her, but every time I check and she's perfectly fine. He talks so highly of her to me, I'm not sure what he is doing. College students, what's the craziest thing that ever happened in your dorm? Across the hall from me lived Ron and Todd. They were not a good match. Ron was basically an overweight hippie, and Todd was on the football team. The funny thing about it was that it was Todd who drove Ron crazy, not the other way around. Todd basically didn't care about Ron's antics, but Ron couldn't stand sharing his dorm room with a straight edge. So after a few months, Ron cooks up a plan to get Todd out of the room. One night, in the middle of the night, Todd wakes up. The blinds in the room have been pulled open, and it's light enough to see in the room. Ron is standing in the middle of the room, naked, painting a huge mural on the wall that has the door on it. As Ron moves from area to paint, he skips and quietly sings to himself. Ron also paints himself. Little paint for the wall, little paint for Ron. After 5+ minutes of watching this scene from his bed with growing disbelief and horror, Todd says something, and Ron turns slowly to face Todd, skips over to Todd's bed, kisses Todd full on the lips, and says, "Go back to sleep, Todd, you're dreaming." Todd is just sleepy enough to find this somewhat convincing, so he rolls over. Also, what else is he going to do? Fight his naked, paint-covered roommate? The next morning, Todd wakes up, and there's no mural anywhere in the room, no paint on the floor, no paint on any of Ron's bedclothes, and Ron is fast asleep in his bed, wearing a t-shirt. Todd wakes Ron up and asks if anything odd was going on in their room last night. Ron replies that he had a chemistry test that wiped him out, so he just came straight home and went to bed and had been asleep until Todd woke him up. So now Todd doesn't know what to think, but the best answer appears to be that he had a homoerotic dream about his roommate being a painting satyr. So Todd nopes the fuck out of the dorm room and gets reassigned. It made no sense to the rest of us either, until much later when we were having a beer in Ron's room. He asked us if we wanted to see something cool. Sure, we did. So he shut off all the lights and then turned on a lamp hidden near his bed with a black light. All of a sudden, a massive, glowing mural appeared on the wall with the door on it, and all over Ron's sheets and comforter. And Ron just started laughing his fool ass off. And that's how Ron got a room to himself.
My little brother went from taking animals' lives to being a kindergarten graduate. My brother is 6 years old. I am 28. To make things as simple as possible, my parents suck. Like, they really, really suck. Last January, I had just started my last semester of nursing school. One day I was walking out to my truck to go to class, and DSS is in the driveway. They tell me that my brother is going into foster care tomorrow and I'm the only option left, so they wanted to ask me before they proceeded. I didn't even know my brother had been taken or anything that had been going on. Again, my parents suck and I had blocked them and shut off all contact for a while. Apparently, 2 months prior, my brother's mom had another baby that was born in withdrawal from a few different substances. My dad also failed for some substances. Unfortunately, the baby died. My brother was also removed that day. He had went to another family member initially, but she could not handle him and there was no other family members that could pass a drug test, except for me. I decided to take him. They warned me. He's violent, his behaviors are horrible, he is unalived animals. I took him anyway. I hadn't seen my brother much in the last couple of years, but I decided to give it a shot. It was a nightmare. He was 5 and had been expelled from kindergarten twice. I tried to enroll him in kindergarten at a different school, but he couldn't function a day without hitting, cussing, destroying classrooms, throwing stuff. One day, his kindergarten teacher had to evacuate the classroom because he was destroying it. I had to put him in a school for children who can't function in public school. He went there for 9 months. He hit me, kicked me, spit on me, screamed at me, actively defied me and laughed about it. I had to re-potty train him. He had been having accidents prior to coming to me. I filed an investigation for SA, which I 100% know he was, but no evidence, blah blah. I started him in therapy. He has ODD, ADHD, RAD, and PTSD. I had to leave class every day to pick him up. I was scared I was going to fail, but somehow I didn't. I got a job in the emergency department, and had to leave a lot to pick him up. Scared I was going to get fired. But didn't. I tried everything. I cried and prayed more than I ever have. I read 100 different parenting books. I went to therapy for myself because it was so much and I felt like my 2 children weren't getting any of the attention they deserved because what little I had to pour, I poured into him. I started going to therapy with him weekly. One day I went to the courthouse to relinquish my custodial rights. I just couldn't take it anymore. 2 days later I took it back and kept telling myself, don't give up. Be who you need it. My brother hasn't had any accidents in a year. He hasn't harmed any animals. He had to repeat kindergarten, but he has repeated it in public school and I haven't had to pick him up in over 6 months. He can now count to 100 when before he couldn't even recognize the numbers between 1 and 10. He can read when before he couldn't even recognize any letters of the alphabet. He says please and thank you and listens when he is told to do something or to stop doing something. He doesn't kick or hit or bite or scream. And just last week he walked across the stage as a kindergarten graduate. A day I often wondered would even be possible. I believe my brother, my son, is going to grow up and do very big things. I'm glad I didn't give up. I'm glad I could be who I needed. My sister-in-law wouldn't save my drowning kid because of her trauma, and now I'm being told I overreacted by screaming at her. For context, I, 30 female, have one daughter named Heather, 2 female, with my husband. My brother, 36 male, is married to my sister-in-law, Kelly, 37 female. She has one son from an ex, 12 male, and one daughter, Sadie, 3 female, with my brother. We've never been super close, but before all this we had a good relationship overall, and I liked her. Kelly has a fear of going into water. When she was 6 she was at a family barbecue and began to drown in the pool. There were so many kids splashing around in the water the adults just thought she was playing or something like that. She lost consciousness and came very close to dying. She got into therapy, and has since allowed her son and Sadie to learn how to swim. When Sadie was 1 or 2 years old, she'd only allow it as long as her son or my brother were right next to her. Now she seems fairly laid back over having her kids in the water even without strict supervision. This was surprising to me, but it's her life, so I never commented. A few months ago she and my brother even told me she was doing exposure therapy and slowly learning to not let her fears control her. She's even had a small swim lesson and was feeling fairly calm walking around in a shallow pool. Every Thanksgiving and Christmas we go to visit my parents in the retirement neighborhood in Florida. Kelly has told me all about her past and the time we've spent together there for the holidays. It has a nice community pool with a recreation center. There's only a lifeguard on duty Saturday, but the recreation center has employees at the front desk if you go inside. While we were there for Thanksgiving, the Weather Channel predicted only one day would be nice enough for the kids to swim. My sister-in-law, brother, husband and I were planning to take them in the late afternoon. Grandparents were busy with some other event that day. I fell and sprained my ankle. My husband said he'd drive me to an urgent care. I didn't want my daughter to miss the pool outing, so I said I'd allow her to go with my brother's family. My brother and nephew promised to be by her side the whole time. My brother and nephew apparently wanted to play ping pong on the table that was in the recreation center. Sadie and Heather were still splashing in the shallow 3 feet end of the pool with Kelly watching in a lounge chair. She said they could go because she'd keep an eye on the girls and go get them if they get into any trouble. Kelly had put Heather in a pool tube around her waist to float. Somehow Heather flipped over and was stuck upside down in the water. She began to kick and panic, so Sadie got scared and started to cry. Kelly noticed and also started to freak out. She began to scream at Sadie to get her out or flip her back over. Sadie tried at first but wasn't strong enough and couldn't get a good grip. Plus she was scared and confused from her mother's yelling. I know she has a legitimate trauma, so I understand why that would scare her and would have been fine with her not jumping in herself. I wouldn't be so upset if she then had the common sense to run into the recreational center to grab anyone else to save my daughter. It was the next building over. If she had ran inside to ask for help, everything would have turned out a lot better. I have no idea what was going on in this woman's head, but she grabbed the pool net to try and get Heather out. This would have made sense if she had used it to guide my daughter to a place she could grab her out, but it seemed that she tried to carry my daughter in the net, and when she didn't fit she moved to a different strategy that looked like just awkwardly smacking her. This moved Heather to the deeper part of the pool. She never seemed all that stupid to me, so I don't know why she tried to save my daughter in the most inefficient way possible. Eventually a recreation center employee heard her panicking and ran outside. He gave her CPR and she threw up a lot of water. They called an ambulance and my husband and I met everyone at the hospital. Heather had a lot of bruises on her lower half. I asked what happened and Kelly told me about the pool net and everything, plus how she hadn't immediately gotten someone else. I was so angry I yelled at the boys and her how she could see my daughter dying and not do anything. The first thing she said was literally while I kept yelling at Sadie to help her. This really pissed me off. She was blaming all this on her toddler. I know everyone mistakes, but seriously, when I asked her why she didn't sprint for help right away, she said she was overwhelmed and that I shouldn't attack her because my kid couldn't swim to save herself. The pool tube was around her waist and was trapping her upside down. This set me off. I wasn't still and disgusted with my brother, but her words made me break and lose it. I started to scream at her how pathetic she was and that she was just as bad as her family members who let her drown. I kept yelling until she started to sob and security made us stop. My husband and I were so upset we demanded to see the recreation center's footage from the pool security camera, and we saw exactly what happened. After we went back home I sent a short text to Kelly that I was sorry for losing my cool. I was completely out of line and blamed the wrong person to deal with it all. She sent back a paragraph saying I'm a psycho for blaming her for her own trauma response. She even said maybe it would have been better for my daughter to die than have a mom like me. Obviously I haven't contacted her or my brother since. My parents began to yell at me when I yelled at Kelly, so I haven't spoken to them much either. For Christmas we aren't joining them this year. My husband fully agrees with me. My best friend and her family live a few hours away, so don't see her as often as I'd like. Since it's just us for Christmas, she offered to have a stay at her nice house so my daughter can play with her kids. A couple days ago we stayed up drinking wine and talking. She knew about it, but I told her all the details for the first time. After I was done she asked if she could give me a bit of advice. I was curious what she wanted to say, so I said yes. She said what Kelly said was awful and she went way too far, especially with her text about my daughter. Plus it was stupid that her first thought was to yell at her toddler daughter to do something. Kelly could have handled it all way better with a calm start. Of course though she was panicking, so she couldn't think as clearly. I'm furious with my brother as well. I was so upset and was yelling at him too. It was what my sister-in-law said that really hurt and set me off. I was so panicked and wasn't thinking straight. I will never let my brother watch Heather while I'm busy doing something ever again. She said she understood why I felt so angry in the hospital, but I shouldn't have had such an emotional reaction, or at least should have found time to eventually sit down in person and apologize for my outburst. It was a stressful situation for everyone. The mean things Kelly said after were wrong. I should have sat down face to face to discuss all of our feeling and give both her and had the chance to apologize for what we said to each other. I'm feeling a lot more guilty now. I lashed out and she lashed out in turn. I talked to my husband about it, but he's still furious with them and says we don't know them anything. I miss my niece and nephew. Am I in the wrong here?
What's the most jaw-dropping thing your father's told you? My father told me to take his life. I was shocked. My dad was the gentlest, calmest man I knew. It was the middle of July 2019. My 88-year-old dad had begun acting strangely about a month before. He kept repeating the same things over and over again. The most common one was, "I've committed the unforgivable sin." I would ask him what that meant, and he would tell me that he didn't want to talk about it. Then he would repeat something about his dark thoughts. It was as if he was struggling to talk about it, but he would never explain himself. The other strange thing is that he would stop participating in family discussions. He would passively sit there, staring, almost mute and unemotional. He had been a talkative person, but now he seemed remote, and if probed he would mutter non-sequiturs about maybe devils or God speaking directly to him. It was at the beginning of June that he had began to have strange falls. We noticed he had a cut on his head one day. He said he woke up on the bathroom floor. About a week later he had another cut on his head, and he said he fell against his dresser when he was getting out of bed. He told me he would feel safer if I came to live with him, and since my divorce had just happened and I had no home anymore, it seemed like a good fit. I had only been staying with him a week or so when he started muttering to himself all night. Then he'd shout, I said yes, at the top of his lungs. He did that hundreds of times in one night. Twice he also wet himself before he made it to the toilet. After a few nights of this we took him to the hospital. The doctors were not sure what was causing it, but thought it might be seizures. They gave him anti-seizure medication, and soon he was feeling better. I took him home for another week. We then had a follow-up checkup with my dad's family doctor. Dad had answered all the doctor's questions sensibly, just like his old self, although my sister, who was there, and I had shared with the doc some concerning symptoms, such as my dad's incoherent rambling that often worsened in the afternoons, and his extreme tiredness. As we were driving home he told me that I needed to stop the car. He told me that I was going to get into an accident. I told him I appreciated his concerns, but I was absolutely confident that I would not get into an accident. I was going to drive extra cautiously in light of his fears. He became quite agitated that I didn't know what danger I was in. I pulled into a bakery that was there, bought some bread, came back into the car, and he seemed okay again. It was when we arrived home that he finally told me that it was not okay. He was dying and he wanted me to end him. He'd committed a sin against the Holy Spirit, and needed my help to do the deed. Well, my father has always been religious, but he's never been a religious fanatic. He was never the kind of person to believe that God or devils were talking to him directly and exclusively. I could always tell someone was psychotic by the fact that they would ignore sensible, trusted loved ones who might have had a contrary viewpoint. My father's job, you see, back in the 1980s, was in part helping psychotic people transition out of mental institutions and back into normal life. It was at that time he taught me this axiom: neurosis is building castles in the sky. Psychosis is living in them. My dad was living in them. Yes, I had seen my fair share of psychosis. I was now convinced that my dad had gone genuinely psychotic. Since we had recently been visiting his family doctor, I called him about this new psychotic episode, and he told me to take my dad to the hospital right away. That night after I'd left the hospital but my dad stayed, of course, the nurses reported that my dad took off his hospital gown and ran up and down the hallways grabbing random things from carts and nursing stations. The staff had to restrain him. They upped his anti-seizure medications, and he became extremely dopey. It was after a few weeks of this that many people, including the doctors, suggested I give up on my dad. But I never did. My siblings didn't either. We disbelieved the doctors when they told us that this might be the new normal. My dad was probably dying, they said, and we had to get used to it. The nurses told us that he was acting as if he had a bladder or urinary tract infection. The doctor said that was impossible. The blood work was not showing it. It was my theory that my dad had a tooth infection. We had a dentist appointment scheduled in June that had to be cancelled because of his episodes. I kept asking the doctors to investigate his mouth, but there was no dentist on staff in the hospital, no dental x-ray machines. They told us we could take him to a dentist, but he was too loopy to leave. We kept wondering if maybe the seizure medications were making him so dopey. I kept wondering about whether the sudden onset of the symptoms, everyone said dementia doesn't happen all at once like this, could have been caused by some kind of infection, and whether antibiotics might be helpful. Who am I to know? I'm just a son who cares about his dad. I'm no doctor. We siblings all watched my dad for weeks. We prevented him from falling as he went to the washroom. We tried to take him on walks, although that was challenging. We tried to get him outside into the sun, because we knew he needed some vitamin D. None of these things were services that the hospital could provide. We sat with him day and night. In the middle of August, 2 of my dad's implant teeth fell out. By this time he was passing out in his chair 30 minutes after taking his meds every day. The doctors reevaluated his blood work. They said there were some slight markers of infection, and they would give him some antibiotics finally. They also adjusted his seizure meds. 2 days later, almost like a miracle, he became himself again. After that my siblings and I continued to spend every day with him. What is the best thing you have found when metal detecting? I found a men's class ring while metal detecting with my sons. The ring is from a local university and dated 1965 with initials engraved inside the band. I posted about this ring on a Facebook page dedicated to lost class rings around 7 a.m. in the morning. A member of the group researched the JCU yearbook to find his name and then used a People Finder site to get a phone number and messaged me by 7:30. I waited till 8 o'clock to call. A gentleman answered the phone and I asked for him by name. This is he. Hi, my name is Mike Gibson and this may sound a little weird, but I was out metal detecting with my boys this weekend around the Chagrin River and found a class ring. I heard a slight gasp. I remember exactly where I lost it. We were climbing the rocks along the river. I heard joy and disbelief in his voice. I then began to realize this was real. He went on to tell me he didn't come from a rich family, so the $80 he'd spent on the ring was a lot of money. He did not have the ring very long before losing it. It is something that I've regretted my whole life, he said. So much so that he bought a replacement ring about 10 years ago. Now I am beginning to realize the opportunity to help teach our kids an important life lesson that they will never forget. I ask him if he would mind coming to our house for dinner to get the ring and tell us his story. He agrees immediately. That would be great. I would love to meet your kids and tell them my story. So now we have set a date for dinner on Saturday, March 7th. Then I said that's the next time we will have all of our kids together. Do you mind waiting until then? I've waited 55 years. Another week won't kill me. I am in a sort of long-distance relationship and I don't know what to do. So to begin with, I've known her since I was about 6. She was my neighbor. We used to hang out all of the time. We've always got along. We never fell out, had a fight or a serious disagreement. We pretty much have everything in common. I mean, not absolutely everything, but we understand our own points of view, accept it and joke about it. But anyway, when I was 16 I relocated to a completely different country with my family and I seriously think I'll spend the rest of my life here. Every 2 or so years her and her family come over for a vacation. Because we were such good friends I never really thought it would turn into this. She came over at the end of last year and it was different. I can't really put my finger on why, but I just couldn't take my eyes off her. Something in my head just clicked and totally changed the way I saw her, and I really saw her, not just for everything she is but for everything she isn't. She just seems to be the whole package, everything I could ever ask for. About 2 weeks after she left I told her how I felt. She was ecstatic, and obviously so was I. I don't think I've ever been happier than at that moment. We call each other so often, and most of the time the calls last well over 4 hours. I'm not a super social person, but when we talk everything just comes out. It's so natural and easy, and I can listen to her forever. That's how I feel anyway. I know it's only been around 6 months, but I don't know when we'll see each other again. We're both incredibly busy with work and stuff. It's also going to be at least 4 years until we can get her visa approved. I truly think it'll all be worth it when she's here. The only issue is I don't know if I can entirely trust for some reason. I don't know if she's going to be faithful or if she's going to change her mind because it's very far away until she'll get here. So for that reason I don't know if I'm wasting my time. I want to be there for her, but I feel like that's impossible. I'm trying. I truly am, but I feel helpless and I don't know if I'm enough to keep her happy for now. I hope it will all work out. Parents who should educate young girls about puberty, the mother or the father? I have 3 girls, ages 8, 10, and 12. Their mother walked out on us for another man when our youngest was around 4. My ex still stays in contact and pays child support. A few weeks ago, while doing laundry, I saw red spots on my oldest underwear. I asked her if she knew about it. She cried and told me she tried to call her mom, but my ex didn't call back. She'd been stuffing toilet paper in her underwear, hoping that would work. I explained to her that periods are nothing to be ashamed of and found some great resources online for us to review together. I took her to the store to pick out brands of feminine products she may want to use. She picked Play Tech Sport because she's a gymnast. After we were done, I decided I should do the same thing with my other 2 children. My 12-year-old volunteered to be part of preparing them and we made a whole night of it. It was wonderful and I learned a lot. I even learned what a menstrual cup is and how it benefits the environment. The other day my ex called back. It's been a habit of mine to arrange a video chat and leave the room so they can have some alone time. And when they're done chatting, I'll come back in to talk about boring co-parenting stuff like school bills, etc. This last time my ex was furious with me for talking about periods with the girls. She screamed at me saying that I was sick and perverted. Why didn't I call her myself if I knew it was so urgent? I could have called one of their grandmas or aunts, but my mom has dementia and her mom and sisters call me a loser because I teach kindergarten, so I'm not very fond of them. My ex told me I was being immature and should have just toughed it out for the girls. This really pissed me off, so I answered back that maybe if she wasn't such a deadbeat and answered her goddamn phone once in a while she could have handled this. I brought up everything she does that hurts them. She hasn't been to a single soccer game, piano recital, or gymnastics meet in 2 years. Every other weekend when they come home from her house, they go straight to their rooms, only to emerge hours later asking me why she loves her new husband more than them and what they do to make her leave. My ex responded by saying I should tell them it's not their fault. I was unable to appease her, so I screamed go to hell. She just smirked and pointed behind me saying look what you did. When I turned around, my 8-year-old and 10-year-old were standing in the doorway crying. It broke my heart. I never shout, so I know I scared them. My 12-year-old stormed in and started screaming at her mom. And while I appreciate her sticking up for me, this is not something I wanted her to get involved in. My ex hung up before I could fully de-escalate the situation. Let's just say the girls have been given free reign of the ice cream and limitless hours of video games because I feel so bad. I even watched all the Twilight movies with them. But was I wrong to go on a screaming match with the ex? It's been almost a month and a lot has happened since then. Last weekend, the girls were with their moms. After she dropped them off Sunday night, my 12-year-old asked to talk to me in private. We went into her room and she showed me 2 recordings she'd taken on her phone. One was of my ex trying to convince them I was abusing them. And one was of her and her husband arguing about how much she was paying in child support. I'll be honest here. My cousin is a family court lawyer and basically raped her over the calls. It wasn't pretty, but I was extremely hurt by the affair. I even got alimony. Anyway, my 12-year-old told me she didn't want to go to her mom's anymore. But she said she felt she had to because she's the oldest sibling and it's her job to protect the younger ones. I've always instilled this value in her since I'm the oldest child myself. But seeing this just made me even more upset, because now, it's a battle that no child should be fighting. She's also just started to figure out that her mom cheated. And over the past couple weeks, she started firing tons of questions at me about the timeline of their relationship, which I couldn't really answer. After showing me the recordings, she literally demanded I answer her yes or no. Did her mom cheat on me? It wasn't easy, but I told her the truth with the promise she wouldn't tell her sisters. The way she cried on my shoulder was the most heartbreaking thing I've ever experienced. But she was catching on. I figured if she's going to find out, it should be in a setting where she's comfortable, and she should hear it firsthand. After she was done crying, I told her to email me the recording she took, and I called my cousin. We've just started the paperwork, but my cousin is certain we can get my ex nailed for parental alienation. Since she got a promotion a few months ago, I should be able to renegotiate the child support payments as well. Most importantly, the recording should be enough to give me grounds for only supervised visits, which is what I want. I still want the girls to have a relationship with their mom, especially since the younger two still want to see her. I'm just going to have to make sure I'm present at all times when they're with her. Am I the a-hole for cutting in line, then telling a lady to shut the F up? I was shopping at the dollar store today and got in line to pay. Unfortunately, another lady and I got in line at the same time, but the way I was positioned meant I was actually in the line and she was off to the side. I didn't think it was a big deal and just moved forward when the line moved forward since I was actually in the line. Unfortunately for the other lady, this was a huge deal and she scoffed and said, "Really? I am normally not the kind of person that likes confrontation, but for whatever I decided today was the day." I turned to the woman and said I was in the line first, to which she replied, "Actually, we were in line at the same time." I told her that I was positioned in the actual line first and it was not a big deal. As the line moved forward, she kept scoffing and making noise to show her frustration. Then when it was her turn to put her items on the conveyor belt, she slammed them down to create a scene. I proceeded to pay and tell the cashier to have a good day, and I thought that would be the end of it. Unfortunately, the other woman had other plans, got my attention, and said, "Just so you know, I was actually in line first." Now this may be where I am the a-hole. I turned around and said, "God, will you just shut the F up about it already? It is not that big of a deal, you effing beach." My mom said that I am not the a-hole here, but I kind of feel like one due to this lady's reaction after getting in line. I just don't understand why it was such a big deal, and I guess I should have let her go first even though I was in line. Telling my daughter I'm disappointed in her. Hello all. It's been rough with my only daughter as of late. My husband and I have one daughter, 30. We have been married for 32 years. My daughter was in a long relationship and married for approximately 9 years, and for a long time I thought that it was a good relationship, when out of nowhere around 3 years ago, she decided to divorce her ex-husband. We were told it was a mutual decision, but that ultimately, he wasn't the greatest partner, and there were many things that she was not satisfied with in their relationship. So she wanted to leave. We supported her decision. About a year after the divorce, she introduced us to her new boyfriend, and while my husband and I thought it may be a bit early to date, we decided to continue to support her and meet him. He was, and is a very charming man who treats our daughter wonderfully, and you can tell she is extremely happy. Now to the argument. Recently, we were talking with one of our daughter's friends who was visiting our town, and were discussing our daughter's job and her wonderful boyfriend. Her friend in the conversation made a comment about how they were lucky to be in the same orientation together when they started work. As soon as she saw our confused faces, she gave us the full story, as she realized we hadn't been given it. Our daughter had told us while her and her boyfriend worked for the same employer, they didn't meet until after the divorce. We pressed the friend for more information, and she begrudgingly told us that our daughter and her boyfriend had met during orientation at work while our daughter was going through her marital issues. This led to them becoming closer and her filing for divorce from her ex-husband about a year later. So later that day, I asked to have a conversation with my daughter and brought up what her friend had told us. She turned white as snow, and basically confirmed her friend's story, but reiterated that there was no physical cheating. I told her that physical cheating was not the only way that you could hurt someone, and that it appeared that she had emotionally cheated on her ex-husband. He may not have been the greatest person, but it didn't excuse her actions. I told her that I was disappointed in her, and while I supported her leaving a bad marriage, that I couldn't look at her and her boyfriend the same in this new light in regards to cheating. I still love her and will treat her boyfriend with respect, but it is definitely something I have a hard time looking past. She got angry with me for not continuing to support her in her journey beyond divorce. Am I the ass?
My creepy neighbors are obsessed with my young daughter, so they kidnapped her. Even after calling the police, they still harass her. My husband and I moved to this country pretty recently, and it's been hell just living here. We have 4 kids, 3 girls and 1 boy. Our daughter 6 started school this August for the first time, and a lot of her classmates live in the same area we do. One of the boys in her class lives at the end of the road behind us. When we first moved into the neighborhood back in May, we were welcomed by a few of our close neighbors and this boy's mother, Astrid. She took a liking to my youngest daughter 5 months, but most people fuss over babies, so I didn't think much of it. That same day she told me of how she had lost 2 baby girls and how lucky I was to have so many girls because she only had 3 boys. I thought that was a really weird thing to tell me during our first interaction, but I never commented on it. The next day, she came with her husband Morton. He also wanted to pick up the baby and paid her a lot of compliments. Then he met my oldest daughter and made a remark which I didn't think much of at the time, but I wish I had taken it more seriously. He said my daughter and his son could easily pass for twins as they are the same age and they look alike. They don't. My daughter is super blonde with gray eyes and their son has dark blondish hair with hazel eyes. So, I corrected him. He feigned offense and said what he meant was that she could pass for his daughter, the baby too. Again, I corrected them that with his light brown hair and hazel eyes, neither of my girls could. He eventually laughed it off and said he was just joking after insisting back and forth that our kids could be twins. They then invited my husband and I to go out for drinks, but we declined since neither one of us drinks and we don't like to be too friendly with neighbors. During the summer, whenever my daughter and I bumped into Astrid and Morton, they would call her Jules Jern and sing a song from a famous movie here. It was really weird and I didn't say anything at first. After a few times I told them to knock it off as it was no longer funny. Ever since moving here, they have tried to invite us to many get-togethers, which I found strange as they hardly ever invite the neighbors that they have known for longer than us. Morton and Astrid would often talk to my daughter on her way back to school since she passes their house on the way home. My daughter said that it bothers her as they have both tried to pick her up and Astrid has tried a few times to touch her hair. When my husband confronted them about it, they said it's just the culture here. It's not. The picking up and touching her hair stopped after that. At the beginning of October, they wanted us to help them host a Halloween party and wanted us to meet them at their house so we could coordinate the children's costumes, especially the twins. We declined again as we don't celebrate Halloween. They tried to convince us otherwise and were very pushy. They even had their son knock on our door a few times to play with his twin after school. Knocking on doors to play with other children is normal and most children roam out and about as it's a safe neighborhood and country, so that part was never suspicious to me. However, after the umpteenth time of calling my daughter one of his twins, I put my foot down and said he needed to stop joking about it as it's not funny anymore. My husband went offshore for work, so it's just been me and the children since mid-October. I've had no backup against my crazy neighbors and things only keep getting worse. My daughter's teacher also lives in the neighborhood and she is a childhood friend of Astrid. She was present in the park by our house when Astrid came up to me and handed me 3 costumes, one for each of my girls. She said since we don't celebrate Halloween, her and her husband had decided to host a Halloween party instead and wanted my girls to wear these. I was shocked but told her that wasn't going to happen. The teacher tried to convince me that this would be a nice way of meeting other families and it would be fun for our children. Astrid said she had spent a lot of money on adjusting the costumes and had found the right hairstyle for my daughter to go as Gretel to her son's Hansel. I told her no one made her spend the money as I had made it very clear that none of my children would be going. Right in front of me she took the hairband off my daughter's hair and tried to put one on that she had bought for the costume. I told her to stop and started walking off. She tried to apologize and told me to relax because we are neighbors and friends. Her teacher followed me and said not to be uptight because Astrid meant no harm, she just likes girls. On Monday my daughter came home with a different hairstyle and accessories than what I had sent her off with. I asked her how she got them and she said her teacher had done her hair during lunch. I asked her if she had played rough so her hair needed to be fixed. She said no. Yesterday morning I spoke to her teacher. She confirmed that it was indeed her who had fixed her hair and that it was Astrid who bought the stuff. I asked her why she would go against my wishes, to which she said it was only hair stuff and Astrid didn't want to throw it away as she had spent money on it. She thought with 3 daughters I would appreciate help with some free accessories. She also said that I had not made it explicitly clear not to fix my daughter's hair. I left after telling her to never do it again and returned the stuff. In the evening, the neighborhood children went trick-or-treating. It was only supposed to last from 6 to 8. I let my daughter go off and play with one of the other girls who wasn't trick-or-treating. At about 7 I couldn't hear them, so I went outside to check and they were not there. I asked one of the other children if they had seen her and they said Morton and Astrid had collected her in their car, while her friend had gone home. I hurried off to their place. When I arrived there, they were having a party in the garden and my daughter was there. She had her hair done and she had a candy bag. She was also wearing the costume Astrid had for her. So, in my anger I called the police before speaking to anyone, and once I got off the call I called both of them PDOS as well as everything under the sun in multiple languages. When the police arrived and I spoke to them, we left. Today at school her teacher was very short with me and said there was no need for that as Morton volunteers for the children's football club. Having a police report filed on him was not the wisest of choices. She explained that if I wasn't happy I should have asked for a mediation appointment at the school instead of embarrassing Astrid and Morton in front of everyone. She also mentioned that it was her who helped my daughter change into the costume and it's not unusual for teachers to help their students change here. She said Astrid has been grieving and her behavior is normal for someone who lost so many children one after the other, and not to make it harder on her as people have gossiped quite a bit about it. She said they didn't know they had crossed a line and it wouldn't happen again, so I just had to drop the complaint at the police. On Friday I have to make a full statement at the police station. She wants me to cancel it as Astrid and Morton are not bad people and she thinks I should be glad someone else thinks this highly of my daughter. She wasn't harmed and she sees no reason for me being angry as the children all play in each other's garden anyway. She said not to blow things out of proportion as at no point was my daughter alone with Morton. What they did was basically kidnapping and I don't think mediation would have been the smart choice here. It doesn't matter that they think highly of my daughter, they're just plain weird. My creepy neighbors are obsessed with my young daughter so they kidnapped her. Even after calling the police they still harass her. I filed a report at the police station and was basically dismissed. I was told they would have a word with Astrid and Morton, but I doubt they took it seriously as all 3 kind of defended their actions. Wanting to know why I wouldn't let my daughter go to a party. When we got home, we had a knock on the door in the evening and it was Astrid and Morton. I didn't open the door. On Saturday the 11th, while my daughter was playing in the garden with my next door neighbor's children, she said Astrid was taking pictures of her from across the street. On Sunday, they came by again and kept knocking on the door. They said they knew I was inside and that they wanted to talk. I didn't open the door. I called the police and they said if they become violent, call back. In the meantime, they just wanted me to open the door and tell them I don't want to talk to them. I didn't and they went home, but they left a message in my postbox. It was a long message about how they felt connected to my daughter and how I should take better care of her. How they know how it feels like to lose a child and that they only want what is best for her. On the 15th, I kept my daughter from the school as she said that Astrid's son kept teasing her. I spoke to the principal about the matter and explained that I needed this absence validated. I took my daughter to the store and I think maybe I was followed because not 5 minutes had gone by when Astrid walked in and bumped into me by the dairy section. She apologized and blocked me in with her cart because I tried to get away. She started talking to my daughter and tried to stroke my baby's hair. So, I screamed. That made her walk away from me. The day after, I found another note in my postbox telling me not to be so hysterical, and I have that saved. I called my husband to come home or find a reason to get home as soon as possible because I could not handle this by myself. On the 18th, both Astrid and Morton confronted me in the park and wanted to know why I was keeping Julia Stern, my daughter, away from them due to a misunderstanding. I told them politely, Morton is a big guy and I am not as strong as him, that my husband was home. I lied, but that was enough for them to walk away. I called the police and gave them the latest evidence on the harassment, but all they said was that they would have a word with the two. On Monday, I attended a meeting with the principal and the teacher where she apologized, but she made it out that it was a misunderstanding. The principal was very nice and told the teacher to back off sternly and not to mix her professional life and private life. Astrid and Morton came by my house that evening, and while I was attending to the laundry in the basement, they were talking to my girl in the garden and she let slip that her dad wasn't home yet. They gave her some cookies, but she threw them in the outside bin while they watched on. On Tuesday, they confronted us on the way to school and asked me why I lied about my husband. Luckily I wasn't alone and one of the neighbors on my street told them to back off. In the evening they were banging on my door again and they had their sons with them. I called the police, but they only arrived after they had left. I discussed it with my husband on the phone and he managed to get 3 days off, but he won't be home before this weekend as his workplace didn't see it as an emergency until yesterday's incident. Yesterday they came by again while we were in the park. I was preoccupied with my son and I noticed a tap on my shoulder. It was Morton holding my daughter and he said I should take better care of her as she might walk into the road while my attention is elsewhere. He made it out as if she had run into the street, but my daughter denied it. I grabbed her and the other children and left and packed some stuff. My daughter said she was scared of him because he came out of nowhere and grabbed her. I was furious and that was my last straw. I asked my next-door neighbor to collect my mail and hold on to it while I booked a hotel. She even told me she was going to look out for my house and note if they come by again. Word spread that Astrid and Morton are being weird about my daughter. I have been staying in this hotel since and my husband is arranging tickets for us to visit my parents before the Christmas holidays. At this point, I don't want to stay here anymore and my husband will have to ask for a transfer. I spoke to the principal and she said she would check in on my daughter in the morning, keep her at pickup time, and I can pick her up from the office. I haven't told the principal about our moving plans just in case she mentions it to another teacher, and it gets back to Astrid's friend. I hate lying, but feel that if I don't it may put us at risk. One of my neighbors on the other side of the street said both Astrid and Morton have mentioned that they suspect that I neglect my child, and that they tried to insinuate that maybe I was too overwhelmed with 4 little ones while my husband was offshore. She told them I wasn't and they have now moved on to another neighbor trying to badmouth me. It seems like they are recruiting witnesses/helpers. So, my neighbor said it's best to keep documentation in case they call CPS on us, and to get a copy and confirmation from the police that there is bad blood between us. My husband can deal with the paperwork and the aftermath, and join us when he can arrange a transfer, but I am not staying here anymore.
Arms store employees, what red flags have caused you to deny a sale? Guy asked for a handgun, I asked why, and he told me it was for work, in private security. Showed me his firearm license as well as his security license. Sent off scans of these for background checks, and showed him the products we had. It all seemed pretty normal. His record was found to be clean, so when he came back, I gave him the gun. Now see, the thing is, he had his son with him. The kid was maybe 5, and this guy picked up the gun and asked for a box of ammo and started looking for his wallet. I turned around to grab some ammo, looked back, he handed the gun to the kid. Children that age have no frame of reference for real guns, only for toys. So if you give a child a gun, within a second, the moment they have a gun in their hands, they'll point it straight at someone and pull the trigger. This is what happens every time a young child shoots someone. It always happens within 3 fucking seconds of a child holding the gun that it gets fired into the nearest person. So I turn around, and I see this kid pointing the handgun I just gave his dad not 10 seconds ago, right at my face. Click 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 click. The kid is just pulling the trigger nonstop. Dad fucking laughs, and says he's just playing. The kid is giggling and laughing. And I go from deathly pale to red with blinding rage in quick succession. I take that gun away and deny the sale. It turned into an argument, call the boss, who backed me up as soon as he heard what happened. The thing is, gun stores talk. We called up every other store in 100 miles that sold guns, told them about this, and sent our copies of his licenses to them via email. That kind of blatant negligence may fly in Hicksville out in Bumfuck County where idiots think hunting rabbits with an AK is all fine and dandy, but god damn it we have some fucking standards. I heard all sorts of horror stories from other gun store employees while working there. PPL very obviously intending to murder, people threatening the clerks, people getting their hands on guns and trying to rob the store with them.
My husband left me outside our house in the middle of the night while I was pregnant because he thought I cheated, so I also refused to let him in when he asked to see my kid. My husband's job requires him to stay away from home for weeks or months because of traveling. I had found out I was pregnant when he was away for a month already, and I told him happily. I thought he would be pleased. We were trying for a baby, and he has always wanted to be a father, but he didn't say anything. After a week or so, he was furious at me when he returned. When he had gone for the trip, the next day, one of my old high school friends, a photographer now, went to the town for some reason. He wanted me to show him around the city so he could snap some pics. He had said it was not for work, but the town looked good, and he might be able to make some good stuff out of it. I was delighted to see him. He's not easy to get a hold of. I drove him around the whole day. I had hugged him before he was going back. Someone had snapped a picture of that time and sent it to my husband. Later, I discovered it was his aunt, a lazy, single, and bitter woman. She puts her nose in everything. So this is what happened when he was on his trip. The day he came back, he was furious at me. He said I was cheating on him. I explained everything, but he didn't believe me. I also tried to contact my friend, but he disappeared again. The husband's aunt came to our house and said the authentic necklace my friend gifted me was proof that I was selling myself to rich guys behind his back. This caused a big fight between her and me. I told him it's not like that at all. It's probably not very expensive in the country he bought. It's just a souvenir. I'm not cheating on him. In the end, no one believed me. My husband kicked me out of the house. I was a crying mess by then. I asked him to let me stay the night, as it would be dark soon. He said he was sure the baby wasn't his. He hadn't been with me for a month. He can't see me right now, and I will be getting the divorce papers soon, too. With that, he had pushed me out. I had seriously thought I was going to fall and get hurt. My parents were out of town, and I had no trusted friends with whom I could stay the night. I didn't have any money on me at the time either. He knew all these but still closed the door in my face. I called my brother, who lives in another town. He drove 4 hours straight. I was sitting in the cold on my house door this whole time. He ignored me this entire time. When my brother reached there, he looked really angry. He might have done something to my husband if I hadn't pulled him away, saying I was really cold and needed to get somewhere to stay ASAP. After that, my husband made no contact with my family or me. I could only get a hold of him through his coworker Ali, but he told him he just needed some space to heal. He didn't ask about me throughout the whole pregnancy, but he did make posts about his wife cheating on him on FB and posted pictures with random girls. I don't know who they are. He never answered my texts or calls. He wasn't there at the birth of my boy. He didn't come even after 3 days, even though I informed him. My brother had to go to his house and bring him. Then they did a paternity test, and surprisingly, it was his. Who could have known? He's apologizing since then. I haven't shown him the baby yet. I don't think I would. He's saying he made a mistake. He loves me. He will make it up to me. I told him I'm not buying it. He says I can't keep the baby from him. It's his baby, and he has a right to see it. I'm the off for keeping his baby from him. Am I? One of my high school students was intoxicated at school, and I never would have guessed who was behind it. I am truly appalled by what I have watched go down at the high school I work at this week, in 13 years of teaching, but I have never run into a situation like this. Life for a teacher lately has been hard. Ask anyone you know in education. Kids from the ages of toddlers to high schoolers have been traumatized in their own way by the past couple of years, and I have never dealt with so many frequent behavioral problems from my students until this year. I have broken up so many fights, called so many parents, and cried every week since the school year started. I want to be there for all my kids, but my school just doesn't have the resources to support these kids in the way they need. I thought things couldn't get any worse until a couple of days ago when I noticed that one of the girls in my sophomore class seemed to be acting off. She was usually a quiet girl, but after the kids got out of lunch, she was giggling and talking loudly with others at her desk. I walked over to her and asked her to settle down, and the minute I reached her I was hit with the strong smell of alcohol. I have always taught high school, so I've caught students with alcohol before and even drugs, but never intoxicated students. The girl hiccuped as I realized what I was dealing with. I leaned down and asked if she had drank anything that day. She immediately fell silent and avoided my gaze. I asked her again, and said that if she didn't admit it, I would send her to the nurses and I would find out anyway. That's when she started crying right there at her desk. She looked like a mess, but I needed to find out if she had any alcohol on her, since she could have been distributing it. I kept pressing her, and I told her I was disappointed in her and that she was going to be in more trouble if she didn't tell me where she got the alcohol right this instant. She only cried harder, blubbering and slurring, but I managed to make out the words Mr. Alexander. The next thing I knew, the poor girl was hurling across her desk. The stinging scent of tequila filled the room, and the other students who had already been watching erupted into chaos. Kids were screaming and laughing as I led her out of the room and asked a teacher's aide to escort her to the nurse's office. As soon as I walked back into my classroom, I called the principal and told him what had just occurred with the student. When I told him what the student had said about Mr. Alexander, he asked me to come sign an incident report after the bell rang. Mr. Alexander is one of the student gym teachers. I knew a lot of the students had crushes on him since he was young and handsome. I just would have never thought a fellow teacher would entertain the students in that way, let alone endanger them to the point of buying them alcohol. I'm disgusted, but I plan to help my principal, and possibly the police, in any way possible, and I just hope the son of a bitch gets fired or worse. I dumped my boyfriend for leaving my closet door open. My ex posted on "Am I the a-hole?" with the "Am I the a-hole for not wanting to close my girlfriend's closet?" and I just wanted a place to respond. My now ex-boyfriend, who's 23, and I, who's 24F, were together for 2 years, which would have been 3 years next month. We meet through a mutual friend because of our similar interests. For context, I've lived in my apartment for about 4 years. The mutual friend stayed in the beginning but they moved out 3 years ago, so since then I've been living on my own. I was originally going to have my boyfriend move in with me once my lease ended, but of course, change of plans. So my ex posted on "Am I the a-hole for leaving my closet door open?" yet he missed very important details. One question that kept appearing was why didn't I close the door even though I never leave it open. Ever since I was little, I've trained my brain to always make sure the closet door was closed. When I was 6, I was sharing a room with my older sister, and one night she went over to her friend's house for a sleepover. My parents and I got home a bit late. I remember it being hot since we had the air conditioner on. I went to bed but was tossing and turning because it's really hot. I kept hearing a noise from somewhere but wasn't sure from where and just assumed it was the air conditioner. I laid on my back just staring at the roof and heard my closet door being open. My bed was facing towards the closet, so when I moved my head down, I could see this old man coming out of it. I screamed and my parents came running in. My dad grabbed me and I saw my mom hitting that man with one of her favorite pans. We called the police and later found out that the man was homeless, must have snuck in while we were away and hid in my closet when he heard my parents' car come in. Since then I've suffered from PTSD and fear of someone coming in my closet again. I slept with my parents for a few years after that. We moved to another state once I hit high school. My parents got me a therapist when the incident occurred and to this day, I'm still going to therapy. I felt like it wasn't working though because it was just like I was venting and the therapist would go, "Aha, and how does that make you feel?" instead of suggesting something to help me. That was until my current therapist, she suggested that I could use something like a nightlight and place it by the closet, then I asked if I could use something else like something that could stick onto the walls. It was first these big glow-in-the-dark Dino stickers. I felt kinda silly about it first when I did put it up, but when I had my sleep paralysis, I was still scared but was now able to tell what was sleep and what wasn't and gave me a sense of comfort. I changed the themes occasionally to dinos, planets, and now stars. For the past 7 years, it's worked for me. I moved out of my parents' home at 20 to live in an apartment with my friend who I met in college. I explained to her about my situation because we shared a room and there's only one closet. She understood me completely. She only ever left it open once when she came home from a night shift. She was remorseful and never did it again when she saw how bad I suffered from it. Now to my ex, we pretty much clicked when we met. Had similar hobbies, liked exploring new foods, it was fun. I also told him about my trauma. I asked that I didn't mind it being open during the day, but at night, it needs to be closed no matter what. He could still put or take something out of it but to close it back up. He complied throughout the entirety of our relationship. It wasn't until a few months ago where he started to act very controlling. He would say small comments about certain foods I would eat, like how it's affecting my liver or something, and recommended other things. I brushed it off thinking he's just looking out for my health. It started getting to a point where he suggested I quit my job at one point when he finished college and moved in, but I told him that it'd be beneficial for both of us to be working. He never asked again. However, he did start asking things like if I could cook for him even though I said I was tired from work, would I stop working if he made enough money for the both of us, if I still wanted kids. I think he wanted to ask me to become a stay-at-home wife or mother, but I could be overanalyzing. On the night before we broke up, when he decided to test me, I had the worst hallucinations since I was a teenager. I wake up, see the door open, and start to imagine the man I saw all those years ago. When I woke the next day it was around 4 a.m., I was able to move and started to cry immediately to a point where I couldn't shed any more tears, and apart from the migraine from crying too hard, I felt a numbness. So when he woke up a few hours late I waited for him in the kitchen, just honestly feeling tired. I didn't yell, just spoke in a monotone voice. I told him how I had one rule and that was to close the door. He got defensive, saying he felt like I was lying about my trauma just to see if he would care for me. I told him to leave while I thought things over. I never ignored him and he never texted me the whole week. But now I know for sure that there's no saving this relationship. And you can get your stuff from your brother. I already told him what you did. So good luck. I'll be moving in with my sister out of town. I'm not renewing my lease. I just want to be with people who actually support me.
What did you learn at an embarrassingly late age? Bet I needed glasses. At age 21 my friends were hassling me about being dyslexic because I kept getting words mixed up, second year at uni. Until then, I had just been reading by looking at the shape of words and guessing the words based on the context and wider story. I had been reading this way for years and survived uni before finding out my prescription was plus 1.50. The optometrist said it was amazing I hadn't noticed. When I put the glasses on, everything was in 4K Ultra. I can now see individual letters. The longest time I always heard of sports teams drafting people, and I am tall, so as a kid I was constantly afraid I'd get drafted for the state basketball team just out of the blue. I thought it worked like a military draft. I thought everyone's mouth got itchy when eating bananas, almost 40 years old and find out I'm somewhat allergic to them. Ponies are not baby horses. That you can flush used toilet paper. Parents taught us as kids to throw away the paper in the trash can for fear of backing up the toilet. Wasn't until college that I realized my parents were accustomed to that method because they had shitty plumbing where they grew up in Central America. What are some guy secrets girls don't know about? When people come crying to us, our first inclination is to fix the problem. If we tie down anything in the back of a pickup truck or trailer, it's physically impossible for us not to stand back and say that's not going anywhere. We really do think your hair is good. It looked good before and after you got a haircut. It looked good curly and it looked good straight. It looked good when you woke up and when you made it. As long as it's shaped like the hair we gave girls on stick figures when we were 5 years old, we think it looks good. I'm a girl and I've found out through the years that when guys say something, don't think too much into it, like what's the hidden meaning? Don't overthink it. Guys normally say stuff that should be taken at face value. The nod. When you see a guy you don't know, or kind of know but don't really know well enough to talk to walks by, you give a subtle nod of your head, which they return. We desperately want you to toss us things instead of just handing them to us. I like hugs. I'm not staring at you, I'm zoned out thinking about how I'd start a brewery in medieval England whilst my eyes just happen to be facing your direction. Today I effed up my cheating on my wife and putting her in a mental hospital. My wife is American and I am French and we both live in my home country together. At first our marriage was loving but my wife deals with a lot of mental health issues. I know this is all my fault, but it's gotten harder to stay in my marriage over time. My wife and I have been married for a little over 2 years. She has depression, type 1 diabetes, self-diagnosed autism, severe anxiety, survived multiple suicide attempts and is in and out of the mental hospital. I care for her deeply, she is my best friend and she would never do anything to hurt me on purpose. I have developed depression due to the stress of her constant symptoms. I love her but she's not easy to be married to. A little over a year ago I started feeling alone and unloved. I kept these feelings to myself as I felt that saying anything would only upset my wife and possibly make her condition worse. A little over 3 months ago I couldn't keep it to myself anymore and started asking my wife for couples counseling. After asking over and over again she finally lost her patience with me and told me she doesn't need it and if I need counseling I should start solo therapy. Something broke in me and I started planning how to get an amicable divorce in a way that would be the best given our situation. I started looking for friends online. I don't have any friends, even my family didn't know about anything until recently, that I could share my situation and ask for opinion. One of them was a girl from Florida who made me realize how toxic our relationship truly was. I, like an idiot, tried to rebound with her, telling her how sure I am about the divorce, that she is cute, jokingly saying that we will have to go out for food once everything is over. After contacting a lawyer, I learned that my wife would have to go back to USA after signing the papers. This would be impossible for her as she has problems with her family, doesn't talk to them at all, meaning that I would have to throw her out on the streets. Here she has healthcare, financial stability, somewhat as I just finished university and I am just starting my career, and hopefully education opportunities. I quickly came to a conclusion by myself that I cannot leave her for those reasons until at least she gets diagnosed and educated. Maybe this was the wrong choice, but I couldn't have just thrown her out on the streets knowing her issues. I told the girl from Florida that I couldn't talk to her anymore given the situation but still felt unhappy and alone so I sent her MSGs from time to time giving updates on my life. I'm a piece of poop, I know. I decided to try harder to help my wife and try to fight for our marriage, and then I was going to tell her I only want to be her roommate until she finishes college herself. While she is in mental hospital again after trying to unalive herself after a fight with me, I wouldn't leave the bathroom after I locked myself in from stress when she wanted me to leave our apartment. This time she logged into my Reddit and saw the last message I sent to the girl. It obviously shattered her. She doesn't want to see me right now, which I understand, but I am worried as she has no one there. I don't know if it sounds like a poor me story. I don't want it to be. I fucked up bad. I hurt her in the worst way possible and there's nothing to do but to see what she decides herself now. Have I been honest and loyal to her, none of this would have happened. Am I the a-hole for not inviting my friends for an annual New Year's trip because they didn't invite me last year? Hey guys, it's been a while. Sorry for taking so long to update. I got logged out of this account and couldn't get in Anyway, there isn't really much to tell you all. I am still going on a trip with my roommate. We actually got a few more people to come so it's more like a group thing now. None of my old friends Considering my old friend group I did see some of them a few times and cleared some things up. My ex was actually the first one to apologize to me. We talked a lot about everything and he is actually separating himself from the group as well for a bit, not just because of this. And we are on good terms now again. 2 other friends came as well and apologized. They said that they believed it was ridiculous to bring Amy since the beginning, but OFC didn't say anything for the sake of peace. I get it, and honestly I'm not mad at them anymore. At least they are sorry. And for the rest, we are not talking anymore, so I guess that's it. Thank you for all of your rewards and upvotes, but more importantly for your advice. I couldn't have done it without you guys. All of the love to you.
My insecure friend is dating my ex. She's threatened and doesn't want me around him. So she hid from me and ghosted me. A week ago, my husband was out for dinner with Jess and her husband, a childhood friend that I reconnected with 5 years ago. Jess and Lisa are both my friends, know each other but do not hang out. During the meal, she told me she ran into Lisa the day before with her boyfriend whom she met for the first time, and said to me that she seemed a bit awkward. I then told her that I hadn't heard from Lisa for over a year now, despite my multiple attempts to reach out, but she just didn't reply. My husband then joked, saying maybe she was too busy with her new boyfriend now, but I was very hurt by her silent treatment. Jess thought the situation was weird too, and just told me that her boyfriend seemed nice and they knew each other for a long time before dating. I don't know why, but my mind just got a light bulb lighting up, and asked Jess to describe the BF. Turns out it was my ex that I dated when I was 17 for 6 years. I left him because I fell out of love. A year later, I met my husband. Lisa was in the front row seat for our relationship evolution and knew that we were happily married, and most important thing, I don't have romantic feelings for my ex anymore. I haven't even seen him for 10 years. The next day I texted Lisa and asked her if she's been ignoring me because she's been seeing my ex. Not 5 minutes later, she replied saying, yes. She doesn't know how I found out, but she's relieved. She doesn't know how to tell me, and she's been with him for a year now. I kind of lost my cool when she told me that she values our friendship. I told her I don't believe that, because the moment she decided to hide this from me, she threw away our friendship, and I was hurt by her silence. I would understand if she wanted to keep her distance from me for a while when she started seeing my ex. It would suck, but I would accept, and I would be very happy for her if they ended up being serious because I love them both, and want them to be happy. But now I don't know if I can forgive her for letting me struggle for over a year and even thought that somehow I did something wrong that hurt her. To be clear, I'm not mad that she's dating my ex. I'm angry that she ghosted me for a year. I would love to see them together and happy. That's why I'm very lost, even feel like somehow it's my fault, that she couldn't trust me enough to know that I wouldn't mind, but happy for her. Update: I reached out to Lisa after calming down, but still not answering her phone, so I end up sending her a message. I basically told her that I was hurt by her action, not the fact that she was dating my ex, but the way she treated me. I thought we were friends. I can't understand why she decided to choose to ghost me. I know we will never return to be friends, but nevertheless, I wish her to be happy and work out this relationship that cost our friendship, but still no answer. 3 days ago, Jess and I met after work for a drink. She made some investigation on her own. She knew of my previous relationship with my ex and knew how it ended. I know over the past 10 years, my ex had 2 serious relationships that didn't work out. Jess told me the first one didn't work out because he was still hanging up on me, waiting for me to change my mind. That was exactly why I cut contact with him so he could move on. The second relationship didn't work either, but we don't know the reason. Our conclusion is maybe I don't mind that Lisa is dating my ex, but she minds that her boyfriend's ex is around, and that's me, since we used to hang out quite a lot together. I'm not mad anymore. I actually pity her for being insecure. If she fears that my being around will sabotage her relationship with my ex, even intentionally, then leaving them alone will be the best thing to do. I'm at peace now and sincerely hope they both are happy.
I just saw a video of my best friend's fiancé calling my wife a slur. I'm supposed to be his best man at their wedding next week. I am married to a black woman. I love her so much and no one I've ever met has had a problem with her or our relationship. My best friend since childhood is getting married next Saturday to his fiancée Carly. She's always been really nice and both me and my wife like her. I got a message from one of Carly's bridesmaids on Instagram a few minutes ago with a video of Carly calling my wife the N-word. The hard R was said and she even used the adjective, dirty. I was just shocked and didn't know what to think. I never would have expected her to say something like that, and she's never had a problem with my wife, at least not to my knowledge. I was supposed to be the best man at their wedding, but then I wasn't sure if I wanted to stand there and watch my best friend marry a woman who said something like that about my wife. I realized what I needed to do was confront my best friend. I asked him to come over when my wife wasn't home so we could talk. I showed him the video and he was shocked. He apologized numerous times and said he would talk to his fiancée. He did confront her and the wedding isn't happening anymore. He had told her that he needed to talk to her about something and she apparently broke down. Turns out that she had cheated on him a few months ago with a coworker and she thought he'd found out. So yeah, the wedding isn't happening and my friend is crushed. I feel bad for him, but at least he found out she's a cheater and racist before they got married. I'm also relieved that he didn't know about her racism. I did start wondering if he had been condoning it or had the same feelings, but I'm glad he didn't. As for my wife, I sat her down and showed her the video. I wasn't too sure about showing her because she's a really sensitive N-word and nothing breaks my heart more than seeing her cry. I figured it was better to just tell her instead of having her find out by herself and be mad at me for keeping it from her. She started crying after she saw it and didn't want to talk. I bought her favorite snacks, which are bananas, kind of ironic.
I asked my girlfriend to control her daddy issues around my dad. My girlfriend, Shay, and I were on a vacation to my hometown. She's never met family, so I thought this would be a great opportunity to introduce everyone. Since we've arrived, Shay's behavior towards my dad has been seriously off-putting. For example, I thought it would be fun if we all went horseback riding, but Shay wouldn't even get on the horse because she said she was scared. I offered to stay with her while the others went, but she insisted I go since my dad already offered to stay behind. When we got back, she asked my dad to show her around town instead of meeting my old friend from high school with me. The final straw was when we were all at my aunt's house for dinner. Shay made cupcakes with chocolate and peanut butter specifically because they're my dad's favorite. Thing is, I hate that flavor. When we got back to our Airbnb, I confronted her. I asked her to rein in her daddy issues and to stop being so clingy with my dad. She blew up at me, telling me that she's trying her best to fit in and that I put no effort in making her feel welcome. She reminded me that her dad left when she was a teen, so it's nice to have a fatherly presence. Neither of us were willing to compromise, and I ended up sleeping at my girl best friend's house for the night. Nothing happened because my girl best friend ended up rejecting my advances, saying that I would regret it in the morning. When the morning came around, I tried my chances again with her. She began threatening me, saying that she'll tell my girlfriend if I don't leave her alone. I decided that she was no fun and I better try to mend things with my girlfriend because my nerds were getting blue.
I asked my girlfriend to control her daddy issues around my dad. I went back to the Airbnb to find my dad with my girlfriend. He was in the kitchen cleaning up what looked like leftovers from breakfast. He had stopped by a cafe and bought us breakfast, but I wasn't there when he arrived. Shay had already told him everything about our argument and he wasn't happy. I helped him clean up their breakfast as we spoke. My dad told me that Shay didn't want me to miss out on horseback riding, that she wanted to give me time with my friend without being the third wheel, and he said that his favorite cupcake flavor came up while they were walking around town together. It was an embarrassing conversation. When my dad left, I spoke to Shay and apologized about the misunderstandings. She was really quiet and began crying. In her opinion, it was clear to her that we have underlying issues in our relationship. I got angry because she was trying to make it out to be a big ordeal, so I laid hands on her. We were supposed to go to a games night at my aunt's, but Shay wasn't up for it after our chat. I told her that this was unfair to my family because they did nothing wrong, but she wouldn't budge. I told her if she didn't want to go to the games night, that's fine, but we were going to play a game of our own. I proceeded to unclothe myself, and when she realized what was going on, told me she wasn't in the mood for that either. I dismissed her and took what I wanted. After, she locked herself in the bathroom to cry. I was so sick of her crying all the time, so I went to the bar to blow off some steam. While there, I got a text from her saying that she's breaking up with me and by the time I return she'll be gone. My family asked what had happened, so I said her mom died and she needed space.
My husband's ex-wife demanded that I pay for their kids' private school, but I refused. Now my husband is giving me the cold shoulders and accusing me of not loving his kids enough. I have been with my partner for 4 years, and we have a 2-year-old child together. I have 5-year-old twins, full-time custody as their dad passed away, and he has 2 children, 7 and 12, who he has 50-50 custody of. I was raised in a pretty wealthy family where my siblings and I attended private school, which I valued and wanted any future children of mine to attend also. My twins are now finishing their first year of school at the private school I attended. I paid for their tuition, and my husband knew they would be going, so I clarified that I valued this. He also agreed that it is a good investment and would want our child to attend, paying half each when the time comes. His children do not attend a private school but attend highly ranked public schools. Since the twins started school, his ex has been causing issues and saying that it is unfair and showing favoritism that my children attend a better school than theirs. My husband agreed, and they applied for the same school, but when the time came to accept the offer, his ex changed her tune and could no longer afford to pay her half. Note that my husband pays alimony and child support to almost 50% of his wage, and we pay for most other miscellaneous expenses. My husband asked if I would pay her half, and I said no. Ever since this happened, he has been distant and accuses me of not loving his children enough and treating them differently. I could afford the other half, but it isn't my responsibility. I never asked my husband for any financial help for my children's upbringing and wouldn't expect that of him. I felt confident in my decision to refuse. I have offered to pay some of the fees. I offered for us all to sit down and discuss finances and contributing abilities. This was denied, and his ex shut down and began refusing to pay any fees. The situation could have been avoided if discussions had been held like these before the application. I was not involved in, only informed of, the application as they are not my children, so it was none of my business. But it is now all my business when they want me to pay for everything. Update: I initiated a conversation with him to discuss everything. I once again suggested decreasing child support and alimony and paying together, but I also brought up how unfair it feels that he and his ex have teamed up against me in this situation, and I do not think that we have been behaving as a partnership. I brought up my grievances regarding feeling used and unappreciated and how he treats my twins being unacceptable. I voiced my desire for us to have time apart and get into therapy, saying that I needed some space to think as I was unhappy with the effect this was having on the children. I won't rehash the entire argument, but after talking about how I feel his relationship with his ex was inappropriate and crossed some boundaries, I was made aware that he and his ex have slept together multiple times during our relationship. I don't have much else to say. I feel completely numb. I have asked him to leave and am talking to a divorce lawyer. I do have a prenup, and we have only been married for just over a year. He swears that it was a mistake and regrets it, that he loves me and wants to be with me. According to him, it just happened. I should be more understanding that they have a history together, and he didn't mean anything to happen. He hasn't asked to see his daughter or stepkids since leaving, despite me asking if he wants to see our daughter.
Am I the asshole for yelling at my younger sister? For some context, I am the middle child of 3 daughters. My older sister 22F, me 15F and my younger sister 11F. My little sister has been spoiled by my dad and older sister ever since she was born. If she just begs and cries, she'll get exactly what she wants. She doesn't do anything, is overweight, lazy, and a crybaby. About a week ago my birthday came around. I wasn't planning on doing anything that day, but my older sister, I'll call her Jenny, came into my room suggesting we go to the mall. I agreed because she said we could go into my favorite store and maybe get Chinese food. We were planning on going with just us two, but my little sister, I'll call her Isabel, saw us getting ready and wouldn't stop asking us where we were going and eventually started getting ready herself. I was obviously annoyed as I knew how this trip would go. We ordered an Uber and left. When we got to the mall we immediately went to one of my favorite stores. Isabel began running around the store looking for stuff to get. I took time looking at everything because I knew Jenny wouldn't get me a lot, but she would get my stuff. After I got a few shirts, which were on clearance, and some jewelry, I went over to my older sister who was waiting by the front. We bought what I wanted, which came out to about $18 with clearance and the discount because she works at a store that partners with this one. When Isabel came over she showed my sister what she wanted and we went to pay. Her stuff came to around $30 even with my sister's discount. Jenny was angry, but we just left and continued shopping. I am a bit of a gamer, so I suggested we go to GameStop and get a new disc because mine broke somehow. Isabel then whines and says she wants to go into a different store because in her words, GameStop is for nerds. My older sister for some reason agrees with her, so we go into another store. Isabel starts grabbing things off shelves and begging my sister for them. It was a long process, so I'll skip this part, but I only got a shirt and a pair of shorts from that store and we spent over $50 there. We decided to look around more and I again suggested that we go into GameStop. Jenny agreed at first, but then my younger sister chimed in. Let's go to the Build-A-Bear shop. And grabbed my older sister by the arm. She apparently needed more clothes for hers. My older sister agreed again, only because she has a Build-A-Bear that her boyfriend got her. We spent way too much money in that store and finally left. We were going to go to GameStop finally, but when we got there was a sign saying the guy working there was on a 30-minute break. Great. So we just decided to go to the food court instead. I got Chinese food while my sisters got some kind of sub. After we finished eating I wanted to go back and see if the guy was off break now, but again Isabel complained that it was for nerds again and that we should get ice cream. I'm lactose intolerant, so I don't do well with dairy, but Isabel gets ice cream anyways and Jenny and I sit and wait for her to finish it. When she's done I suggest again that we go to GameStop and she starts complaining that she wants to go home. And that her feet hurt. And all that bull. At this point I snapped. I will admit I do have anger issues, but due to my parents forcing me to control them around my sister, I've built up a longer fuse, but this sent me over the edge. I didn't start yelling, but you could tell I was angry. I told her, Isabel, this trip was never about you. It was never for you, so stop complaining. This trip was for my birthday and all you've done is take over. My older sister looked at me, shocked and confused. My little sister just rolled her eyes and slumped in her chair. We never did go to GameStop and just ended up leaving after that and taking the bus home.
I'm secretly my boyfriend's live stream viewers. My boyfriend has just started streaming and he seems pretty excited about it. He didn't buy a whole setup yet but live streams whenever he is on. I streamed briefly and know how hard it is to get viewers. I open multiple private browsers on my personal laptop, work laptop and phone. This way I can have his stream going and it counts as multiple viewers. When he saw 4, he was stoked. It's only 4 viewers but he was so happy. There's very little in this world right now that can cause that genuine happiness and expression. I sit on the other side of the couch with the volume down on all devices and just pretend I'm doing schoolwork.
I asked her out before I saw her bottom half. When I was 16, I didn't have a credit card, so I had to go to the bank whenever I needed money. There was this cute chick that was always working there. She'd always smile and greet me, and I'd always try to go in her line. As she was a bank teller, I only saw her sitting down, which is important later. One day, I work up the confidence and I ask her out as I'm taking out some money. She said yes. We set up a time that weekend for me to come and pick her up. She gave me her number, her address, and I ran home, happy as can be. So it's the weekend, and I drove to her house in my rusty Honda. I knock on her door and her dad answers. A split second of oh poop comes over me, but he just gives me this heartwarming smile and invites me into this house. I instantly feel at ease and we go sit down in the living room. Her dad is all happy like I'm so glad you're taking my daughter out and I really appreciate it and all this craziness. I'm starting to worry and I think to myself oh what have I gotten myself into. Her dad reaches into his pocket and pulls out a set of car keys. He says I want you to take my car. I said no. It's okay, I have my car. He's all like no, practically forcing the keys into my hand, still keeping his big smile on his face. The second he hands me the keys, I hear from up the stairs bzzzzzzzzzzzzz holy poop, she's in a wheelchair. A split second of shallow human being comes over me, but I think about it and say to myself I can do this. She's awesome and has a great personality. F it. We went outside, and I realized why her dad wanted me to take his truck. It was all rigged up for the wheelchair. So I took his truck, and we headed to the movies. When we were in the theater, the instant the movie started, she started putting her hands on my junk. She's a freak, which is totally cool with me. We start making out almost during the whole movie. My parents were out of town that weekend, so I asked her if she wanted to come back to my house. She agrees, so we get back in her dad's truck and we're on the way to my house. We arrive at my house. I have stairs, so I have to carry her inside. Thankfully my room is on the first floor, so I got her inside, threw her on the bed, and we started going at it. I've got her in missionary, and I'm pounding the F out of her, when all of a sudden I hear a pop sure as poop. Her leg effing comes off. She's got a fake effing leg. How did I miss that poop? Keep going, she screams as I pull her leg and throw the poop across the room. I pulled her leg just like I'm pulling yours. You and a super intelligent snail both get $1 million, and you both become immortal, however you die if the snail touches you. It always knows where you are and slowly crawls toward you. What's your plan? First things first, that $1 million is practically worthless compared to immortality. Every dime of that cash can and should be spent ensuring that the snail never, ever reaches me. First things first, I keep an eye on him. It's tempting to want to hop on a plane or a train and get as far away as possible. But once I do that, he's gone and I'll never see him again until 3 a.m. on July 14, 2072, when the sneaky little cuss slips in the door and slimes onto me before I ever wake up and notice him. No, I'm going to be within visual distance of the snail, slowly moving away from it, until snail containment plan part A is done. Next I grab my phone, I call up someone I can trust with my life, and tell them to come to my location within the hour, and to bring a metal cash box, a good padlock, and a firearm. Once they arrive, I inform them of the deal and ask them to grab the snail, shove it into the metal box, and lock it up. Once the snail is temporarily secured, I ask my friend to carry around the box, never letting it out of their sight, and to prevent its opening with as much force as is required. We arrive at some reasonable figure for this service, maybe $50,000. Now we can start in on the real work. I'm on the phone again, contracting with a tungsten machining service out of Willowbrook, Illinois. I ask them to construct for me a hollow tungsten sphere with a small, sealable opening, ideally via both exterior bolts and sintering. I ask them for a rush job and a thick wall depth, perhaps as much as a foot thick. The spherical shape should keep material costs as low as possible for a given thickness, but between the unusual object, large amount of tungsten, and speedy delivery, I invest a truly insane amount into this project, let's say $100,000. I ask them to deliver it to my current location as fast as possible. Once the tungsten ball arrives, I have my friend stand well away from me and transfer the snail into the center of the sphere. I ask them to pour a little salt down into the hole after it, just to give the snail a little reminder of who he's dealing with. Once snail and salt are both inside, we seal the hollow sphere with the bolts. Tungsten is an amazing material, incredibly tough, dense, and heat resistant. You could drop it into molten lava and it wouldn't matter. Which, coincidentally, is almost what I'd like to do next. Now we make sure that damn thing stays shut. I find the nearest metal refinery and call them up. I also contract with a heavy machinery moving company to move the tungsten sphere to the refinery. Once the refinery has sintered the tungsten sphere shut, I buy an entire industrial crucible, those big buckets, of molten iron, and the crucible the iron came in. I have them drop the tungsten sphere into the molten iron, and let the whole mass cool in place. Mr. Snaily Snail ain't going anywhere, but I'm probably down another $100,000. Now I'm on the phone to specialist movers. Chartering a boat, we're taking this thing halfway around the world. We take the boat right over the Marianas Trench, not the deepest point, but deep enough. We push the whole assembly over the side. Literal tons of once molten iron, refinery crucible, tungsten, salt, and snail slip over the side and begin dropping into the briny deep. Another $100,000 gone, but well worth the cost. Good. That's bought me a little breathing room. But we're not anywhere close to done yet. I still have at least $500,000 left. I'm going to invest it into solid business ventures and slow growing but secure assets. We're building a fortune, and who cares if it takes a few centuries? I'm frickin' immortal, baby. But as I develop my fortune, it's getting invested into space, SpaceX, asteroid mining projects, whatever. I am trapped on the one planet in the entire universe where I can actually die, and I have no intention of staying there. Over the millennia, I slowly apply my fortune and influence to push mankind to the stars. And the moment living on another planet becomes viable, I'm there. And the instant a habitable planet is around another star, I'm on the first generation ship heading that direction. But I can't think in such a short-sighted manner now. I'm immortal, and I need to think like it. Eventually, the sun is going to burn the earth to a crisp, and then that damn snail is going to be free. It might take him a few million years to land on something, but he'll do it eventually. And then he will construct a spacecraft and begin crawling towards me again. What I care about now is light cones and black holes. It's gotta go. Sorry, whatever's left of humanity. We evacuate anyone still on the old planet, and use a gravity tractor to push Earth into a black hole. A nice, big one so that Hawking radiation will take an incredibly long time to evaporate it away into nothing. And then I board a ship. A fast ship. I accelerate to as close to light speed as I can get, piloting directly away from the black hole with the snail inside. I want to be so far away and moving so quickly that the heat death of the universe would occur far, far before the snail ever reaches me, even on the fastest ship his freakishly clever little brain can construct. So that's the way the universe ends. With nothing in it except for infrared heat, one hyper-intelligent snail suspended in an inky void, and one human screaming away from it. Cheers. What's the most ridiculous thing a high school counselor has done to you? Nora, name changed, was not a bad woman. She wasn't even a stupid woman. She was just, well, special. Nora's job was to counsel older students in the last 2 years of school. This was a difficult age, as students were transitioning from childhood to adulthood, starting relationships, becoming independent from parents and choosing a career. There were lots of messed up teens in my school, and lots of problems that needed talking through. The head of pastoral care, Nora, was the woman we were meant to see. The first time I saw Nora, not Ms. Nichols, I'm just Nora, think of me as your friend, was when I was 16, just before I moved into those upper years and became her responsibility. She wanted to interview some of her new charges. God knows why I was chosen. Maybe she sensed some sadness in me, or a black aura, bad hoodoo, whatever. Her office was busy, papers layered over each other on her desk, perched on top of the pink plastic trays or falling out of sun-bleached pastel folders. She had drawings blue tacked to the walls. There was an A3 printout, clearly produced on the school computer, stating you are loved, you are loving, you are lovable in black Comic Sans. I tried not to be fazed. I'm polite, even to middle-aged women who wear home-crocheted flowery cardigans and print life-affirming slogans to stick on their walls. This was fine. I sat down, exchanged pleasantries. She was perfectly nice, but the first real thing she said, the first thing she asked me, was what animal are you? I'm open, I love eccentrics, and I'm used to dealing with metaphor. Nothing here to put me off, and hey, this was something employers asked in job interviews, right? Maybe this was practice. I opened my mouth to answer the question, but before I could speak, Nora pointed to a spot on the wall behind me. I'm a tiger, she said. I'm strong, I'm fierce. That's why I keep a picture of a one, to remind me of the strength I have. And there it was behind me, another monochrome school printout of a cartoon tiger. I didn't exactly get strong or fierce from the cartoon, nor from her cardigan, but I kept that to myself. Then Nora launched into the story of her life. It was not an exciting life, or an inspiring one. It was actually very dull. The most interesting part, using the term interesting loosely, was her getting her book published. Her book, unsurprisingly, was a self-help book. The front cover, she had a copy lying under the debris on her desk, and showed me the cover without being prompted, was decorated with flowers and birds, and I remember a lot of yellow. She summarized the book, positive thoughts lead to a positive life, or something. Eventually she whipped out the feelings chart. This consisted of 2 huge lists of words, printed out, as I'm sure you can guess, using the school printer, 1 positive, 1 negative. Joyful, energetic, sexy, said the positive list. Jealous, moody, sad, said the negative list. As far as I could see, this list had no purpose whatsoever. I don't know why she gave it to me. I left her office with no information, no advice and no reassurance. She hadn't asked me anything about my life, beyond what animal I was, which I didn't get to answer. Thankfully, I never had a problem, so I never had to go back to her. But some people did. Her main strategy was to tell depressed, anxious, suicidal students to think positively. She told them to think about tigers. She pointed at the "you are loved, you are loving, you are lovable" sign. She told people to read her book, and come back to her next week, and if they didn't show up she'd hand out detentions. She would yell if she thought you weren't thinking positively enough. Oh, you're miserable? That's the opposite of what I told you to do. What kind of attitude is that? Did you even read my book? There was a rumor going around that she killed JFK. Oh, Nora. Today I effed up by jumping into a lake in my bra and underwear to save a man that turned out to be an elite military scuba diver in training. I'm couch surfing with my sister and her boyfriend. I work for him at the lakeside bar, trying to pay for college. My state is open and while I'm not thrilled, I need both the job and my scored sofa accommodations to make it work. To give them their space, and myself a break from the doom scrolling, I take a run by the lake in the mornings. This lake is bomb and draws scuba divers to the flooded town at the bottom. Today, I was in my own head running when a dark mass floated to the surface 40 feet away. I was on the craggy side of the lake and this dude looked dead. Facing away from me, his head was tipped back, eyes closed, bobbing like a fishing lure. No one else was around, so I thought he was quantum crazy out here scuba diving alone at the crack of dawn, giving himself the bends or some nonsense. Like a jackass, I didn't yell at him to check in. Instead, I tore off my shoes and stripped to my undies to save the imbecile. The movie trailer in my head had me taking 3 glorious steps and launching into the deep blue water, Black Widow style. Instead, my tender feet hit the sharp rocks and I contorted under the pain like a slinky as I uncoordinatedly pitched myself into the water, doing a side flop. I was also wearing my contacts so I swam hard in his direction with my eyes closed. When I opened my eyes, he was dead-ass staring at me like I'd lost my entire mind, and I blurted, "Are you okay?" He removed the regulator and incredulously said yes. My brain blue screamed while I tread water. The lake felt infinitely deep. Before I could terrify myself by hearing the Jaws theme song, I turned to nope the hell out of there, yelling over my shoulder, "I thought you were dying." To explain my idiocy. As I pivoted, another dude cleared his throat from 30 feet away on the other side. I was not expecting someone there at all, so I freaked out, failing and belting an ear-wounding scream at him. Both of them laughed as a few more heads surfaced around us. I was surrounded by divers, all wildly entertained by my ridiculous high-octane FU after pointing to me and the beach. The merman that was my original target cautiously swam toward me after I nodded and escorted me to the shore. The beach was much further than I had anticipated, so I was trying to low-key breath, hiding my need to suck all of the O2 from the air. Also, the comedy of the situation consumed me and I started to giggle. Finally, I joked, "Dude, you are lucky you weren't actually dying because it would have taken everything I have to drag your sorry ass this far." He chuckled before offering me a tow. Hell, no. Not gonna happen. Even if I had to dog paddle, I wouldn't openly accept that defeat. He quietly mocked me the rest of the way to the shore. I'm a secret sap for it. They were cadets or recent graduates from a military college, here for the summer. They'd been training in pools and were doing some open water exercises. They had been out there at least part of the night. I'm sure I blew up whatever drill they were running. He's training for pre-dive school and was doing combat diving. At the shore, I did my best to throw my shoulders back and march out of the water in my sports bra and bright dragonfly undies in front of what I can only imagine are some pretty badass men. I did invite him and his clandestine crew for an absurdly overpriced beer at the bar tonight before shame jogging back into the woods for my clothes. Update: today I effed up by jumping into a lake in my bra and underwear to save a man that turned out to be an elite military scuba diver in training. I'm not even a bad swimmer or diver, the merman cheated. He was wearing a floaty vest and fins, that bastard. Okay, I'll admit there is a part of me that is attracted to his mysterious appearance from the shadow realm. And I'm definitely imagining that he's constructed from some kind of aluminum steel alloy, and that he looks very handsome like a merman prince under his gear. But he was also funny and kind. I was vibing his proclivity for witty and sarcastic comments and had a million questions I wanted to ask him. I'm at work now and yes, I'm waiting for him. To all the ladies giving advice earlier, yes, I left the dragonflies at home and went full cute sundress and Jesus sandals. Tried to wear my hair straight, but it's hot as hell out here and it'll be beach wave sweaty before long. My sister's BF has blabbed the whole thing to everyone, and all of the staff is in full-on ribbing mode. Kinda great actually. They are currently reading the Reddit post, so they are cackling at you people too. So, even if he doesn't show, we're gonna have a great night. We have a long way to go since it's just the dinner crowd, but thanks for making my day great. We're getting a solid dinner crowd, but no merman, or frog prince as you people have started to call him. Our lakeside drinking crew will start rolling in another 1 to 2 hours. Update 2, he showed. Oh my god. A little bit ago. I was as dorky as you would have imagined and now I'm typing this from the bathroom like a dumbass again, but I feel like you people are on the ride with me. He's handsome and funny and he smells great. Yes, I hugged him. I'm Southern, it's what we do. He's nice, and smart and keeps defending me from my jackass friends at the bar, who have almost called him merman to his face. I think he low-key likes that everyone knows who he was, but not sure how he'll feel about being a Reddit celebrity. I've learned a lot about him, but it wouldn't be fair to share without his permission. His whole crew did not come, only one, who immediately started flirting with my coworker. That's a good sign, I think. Also, my friend straight up asked him if he saw my dragonfly undies that look like pee-pee with massive, glow-in-the-dark turquoise blue balls. He didn't answer but smirked at me after she left. It was cheeky but cute. He's also been sharing some of the crap that he's been taking today from being saved. He has the same self-deprecating sense of humor as me. I think we are vibing. So, that's all the updates for tonight. He's getting the rest of my attention. Keep sending me those good vibes and peace people. I like him. There's chemistry and similar interests and we have plans to see each other again. Update 3, the merman, the frog prince, the dashing man from the depths, the king of the shadow realm are still very much in my life. He's better than I can describe with my mortal words. Fangirl him if you must because I will understand. Thank you all for the well wishes and positivity that this post has given. I hope something amazing and magical happens to each of you, and if it happens to be shamefully funny, I hope you will share because we all need as many laughs as we can get. Be safe, everyone. My brother died in and I'm the only one who knows the truth. My brother died in a car accident in 2020. My family thinks he died on impact. I'm the only one who has spoken with the medical examiner and read the report. My parents never wanted to, they were okay with me doing it and relaying the info to them. The truth is, there was a fire and he burned alive. My parents know about the fire BC we weren't allowed to view him after he died, but I told them he died instantly from blunt force trauma and the fire just happened afterwards. Not true. He was alive and he burned. That's what was in the report. He also had over 3x the legal limit of alcohol in him, and meth in his system as well. My brother struggled with substance abuse issues the last decade of his life. I knew about his issue with alcohol, but was truly shocked and left speechless about the substances. This was a part of the report which I told my parents he came back clean. We were all under the impression that he'd been sober for almost that last year of his life, so it would have been too much to tell them otherwise. My brother wasn't a bad person, he had a struggle that he couldn't overcome. He did something really stupid and I thank God all the time he at least didn't hurt anyone else. And it's not like he got away with it, he paid for it with his life and in a pretty horrific way. The burden of being the only one who knows all of this is killing me. To know my brother died alone and in so much pain haunts me daily. But I have no one to vent to. And to know that he was using meth, he must have been so depressed and in a bad place mentally, which is also hard for me to think about, that he died sad and struggling. I won't ever tell my parents because they won't be able to bear it. They already struggle enough with just thinking his death was instant. And I also don't want to tell any friends because honestly I don't want anyone to judge him for what he did. I know it was bad, I often struggle with feeling angry with him, I just can't handle hearing that type of stuff when it'll do no good. He's gone and the only person it will upset is me. My stupid entitled aunt needs to be put into her place for what she's doing. So my aunt, Becky, has been letting herself into my mom's house without notice for the past few months. Some background information, my mom and her partner, Ellen, have been together for over 10 years. And within those 10 years, they formed their own little family, giving my 2 sisters and me 2 more siblings, another pair of grandparents, and 2 aunts with their significant others. Ellen's older sister moved across the country so we don't deal with her too often, but her younger sister, Becky, lives about 10 minutes away from us. Pieces of information might seem out of place because I'm always finding new information about her and let me tell you, she is a loser, one of the biggest losers I've ever met. To start, she's a product of infidelity, and it's obvious. Her hair, her body shape, and everything else about her doesn't match Ellen or the oldest sister. She's one of those big girls that didn't get enough attention as a kid, so she resorts to being the most obnoxious and loudest person to be around. She constantly criticizes my younger siblings, Ellen's kids, because those kids have a much better life than she has. It's almost funny to see a 40-year-old woman get jealous over 2 kids. She walks around as if she's without sin and better than everyone else. But the thing is, she knows how to work certain family members into getting what she wants. For instance, she'll just cry about being poor and how her life sucks and her parents will throw themselves at her. She's also married to another loser who's dying of brain cancer, Phil, who's cheated on her a few times. Phil also isn't a great guy either. He's been arrested, has anger outbursts on her, And uses the cancer card to get out of everything. Not to mention he's an avid substance user too. But Becky can't divorce him mostly because she doesn't have the money and they live off what payments Phil gets from the state. Since they get money from the state, she also quit her job and doesn't plan on going back to work in the foreseeable future. She also recently had a kid, a baby girl, Penny, who everyone feels bad for mostly because she's in a losing situation. There is no possible way that Penny has a chance to be happy with the life Becky has. Penny has already had a list of problems ranging from server rashes to effing herpes. Yeah, effing herpes, the STD, my sisters, and I think it's because Becky is always forcing Penny onto someone else so she can socialize. Every time we have a family get together she's always saying hold my baby, or who wants to see my baby next. Honestly, that poop is pretty sad when you see the baby being passed around like that. Becky also had the audacity to tell my mom and Ellen that if something ever happened to her or Phil that they would have to take care of Penny. When Becky said that, I was confused mostly because I couldn't figure out why they would have a kid if they were just going to pawn it onto someone else who is an actual adult that doesn't act like a effing teenager. I don't even want to bring up her living situation because that is a whole other problem. So yeah, Becky's life sucks mostly because of her own actions. Now let's get back to the problem. So, Ellen makes a poop load of money and has a great job. She knew that one thing to do that would make summers tolerable was to have a pool installed in our backyard. This is where Becky started acting like a hole. Once the pool was installed, she would come over, without notice with her friends. Once my mom, Ellen, and myself leave for work and the kids are brought to camp by their grandparents, Becky and her friends let themselves into our house and help themselves to whatever was in the fridge and laying around. We have a lot of expensive stuff put away, and having Becky and her friends in our house makes my mom and I angry because we don't know if they're going through our stuff or looking for something to steal. I, for one, started hiding all my valuables because who knows who's coming into our house. Ellen doesn't seem to have a problem with that, which doesn't sit well with my mom. She might be seeing things through rose-colored glasses, which makes it harder for her to see Becky's bullshit. We've also installed a camera facing the pool and it goes off with movement so we see who's using it and have proof of her antics.
Am I the a-hole for telling my sister that literally anyone can get knocked up? I'm a medical resident with no kids. My sister is a mom with no jobs. I don't judge women who stay home with their kids, but kids simply are not for me and it would drive me crazy to live with them. My sister on the other hand has a son, and to be fair to her, he's a great kid who's really smart and bright. However, he is her whole identity. She's constantly bragging about her son and her only personality these days is being a boy mom. I was in town so I joined my sister for dinner at our parents' house. My aunt was also there, nephew crashed upstairs, and my parents were telling her how proud they were of my residency placement, very competitive field, difficult to get into. My aunt made an offhand comment and asked my sister if she's going back to school. My sister said, no, we all have our talents. Samantha can study all day, but she could never handle being a mother with fertility issues. She would find it as difficult as I would find med school. I'm paraphrasing, but you get the point. I was annoyed, because my sister has this sense of superiority around being a mother while I'm not one. She basically was saying I would be a bad mother if I was one, and that the 8 years I spent in hell devoid of free time is nothing compared to having unprotected intimacy and facing the consequences. So I said something bitchy back. I essentially said literally anyone can get knocked up, and being a good mom is literally the bare minimum. It seems like you don't realize how hard I effing worked. My sister looked shocked and immediately yelped. She still hadn't lost all the pregnancy weight, so as she jumped up, she knocked over a glass with her stomach. The glass shattered, she exploded into tears, and the table sort of split in half. Half the family felt really sorry for her, helped her, and glared at me. The other half was snickering, and definitely seemed to be on my side. The trend was clear: anyone snickering was more successful and had a better life. My sister was crying as she left the table, my aunt left early, and my parents were pretty upset that I ruined dinner. However, I've put up with her looking down on me for not being a perfect wife for years. Am I the a-hole?
My high school bully stole my toy and ruined my life. So once we grew up I stole $80,000 from him as payback. Growing up I used to have a really mean intoxicated father, so I struggled to fit in at school. I was an outcast and had no friends and was even bullied because if I told my teachers, they would call my dad who would in turn beat me up. My biggest bully was Derek, the popular kid in my class. He used to love making fun of me. But one special day he showed kindness. I had brought a very popular, expensive Batman action figure to school to pass time since I was alone during recess. I saved my allowance and mowed lawns for 2 months to buy it, and surprisingly everyone was jealous because they also wanted one. Anyway, Derek came up to me and struck up a conversation without calling me names for once. Being deprived of kindness or attention so regularly I was putty in his hands. He hung out with me during recess and we talked about girls we liked. He even apologized for being an a-hole to me. By the end of the day he asked me if I could lend him the action figure, and like the naive, socially inept kid I trusted him with it. The deal was to return it the following morning. I went home so happy, completely fooled. I never suspected a thing. The following day he completely ignored me. When I tried to talk to him he acted like I was crazy. When I asked him to return the action figure he simply said, "You never gave me any Batman. Maybe you imagined it," and when I persisted he threatened to beat my SS. When I complained to my teacher I was told that it was my own fault for bringing toys to school and I was afraid they would involve my father, so I dropped it. I couldn't let my father know or I would be called a pussy and have my SS beat and punished for the next 2 weeks. What's worse is that Derek told all the girls that I confided in him about fancying that I lusted after them and that I wanked to them. I was a social outcast before that, but at least I was tolerated. But after his smear campaign with the girls I was a leper and people wouldn't even look me in the eyes, not even the teachers. Kids started throwing stones at me, sabotaged and vandalized my property. It was hell. I did nothing about it but cry. I was just a weak-willed kid after all, but to this day I wish I bit someone's ear off or anything in retaliation. After a while the bullying died down and I focused on my studies and started getting good grades. Derek started talking to me again, but I ignored him completely. Sometimes he would repeat, "Why are you being such a baby? You didn't give me anything." You imagined it. By the end of the year we moved houses and I transferred to another school not far away. Things were much better there. I finally had friends and I was not as naive anymore, so I was not as easily targeted. But I was still mostly me and still got picked on now and then. Over the years I became somewhat of a delinquent, and in high school I got into regular fights. I may have been overcompensating for the lack of a spine I had in my younger years. I bartended in nightclubs, hotels, and cruise liners in my early 20s. This helped me a lot to be more socially adept and to understand social dynamics and human nature. I finished trade school and qualified as an electrician and later as a plumber. I know water and electricity, but believe it or not, I thought it was ingenious at the time. I started my own business, developed a reputation for excellent workmanship in my local area and did well for myself. When I was 29, I received a call out at 2 in the morning for a flooding emergency at a local residence. When I got there the place was a mess. Water was jetting out of a burst pipe and electrical equipment was shorted. It was highly dangerous. The living room floor was caved in due to a sinkhole. I was met by the wife, let's call her Jane, hysterical and beside herself. She somehow thought that she was responsible, which I found odd. I assured her that it couldn't possibly be her fault. He arrived not 5 minutes later. His demeanor was irate. He didn't greet or shake my hand when I offered, and I recognized him immediately. Derek from all those years ago. He demanded to know why I have not begun fixing the issue yet. I was professional and told him what I'd told the wife in terms of costs, but I hid the written quote in my vehicle. I told him who I was and acted happy to see him, and assured him that he was in good hands. After a while of arguing with his wife he seemed to calm down and joked around with me. I knew I had fooled him. Here's where my revenge began. What's the worst experience you've had with a roommate? I let my boss crash at my second apartment about 15 years ago. It was a low-end timeshare call center where everyone did substances, and we were pretty much everyman types, so he and I were more friends than co-workers. Anyway, he loses his apartment and asks to stay with me for a couple of months while he gets back on his feet, and I agree. He's a great dude. Kind, smart, funny, confident, and a solid 350 pounds. I only mention the weight because it's relevant to the negative experience. So, around a month into staying with us, he decides to get clean from his crippling opioid addiction. He's decided to go cold turkey from a 20 a day, 10 milligrams hydrocodone habit, which, for the uninitiated, is pretty intense. I advised rehab, but he elected to lie on the couch in my living room for weeks, costing him his job, sweating profusely and shaking under a blanket. The reason why his size was relevant: he sweat a lot already and had to take pains to reduce his body odor on normal days, with varying degrees of success. But with the withdrawals and being mostly sedentary on that cloth couch for weeks, the apartment started to smell very unpleasant. It was a party house with a revolving door, and people just kind of stopped coming during his time there. Even with my bedroom door closed down the hall, the stench was awful. It wasn't his fault. I liked the man, and he was trying to better himself and his life, so I put up with it. And he succeeded. He got himself a new place in the agreed time frame, stayed clean, and everything was hunky-dory. After he moved out, my actual roommate and I carried the couch to the parking lot dumpster, and it took several days to air out the smell. We even did a thermal fog with an oil-based cherry-scented counteractant, and it still didn't help. Kind of irrelevant, but we stayed in touch for a while back when I still had Facebook, and he got his life together. Got a good job as a realtor, lost a lot of weight, had a baby girl, found religion or whatever. Then, after a few years of being off Facebook and radio silence, I get a call from my old roommate saying that he'd relapsed and died from an OD. It was pretty devastating. Rest in peace, Don.
I don't care that you're trying to lose weight. I'll eat this in front of you. I, 45F, have been a stepmother to Lucy, 17F, for the past 2 years. I also have a son, Jack, 15M, from my previous relationship. For the first 18 months that I knew Lucy, she was in love with junk food. She would use the money she would get from babysitting the neighbors' kids to buy cookies, chips, ice cream all the time. It was very unhealthy how much of that crap she was eating. I tried to politely encourage her to switch to something healthier that still tasted good, like yogurt, that she would always respond with "You're not my mom," and to stop controlling my body. Because of this she's put on a lot of weight. Anyway, about 6 months ago, she got into an argument with a boy in school. They called each other names and he ended up calling her a hippo. That made her really self-conscious, and she's been trying to improve her health since then. She threw out all the junk food we had at home and tries to exercise 3 to 4 times a week. She's been making steady progress, and I'm happy that she's been taking care of herself. My son, however, has recently taken a liking to Doritos chips. He doesn't eat a lot of it. Maybe a packet every other week. He mostly eats it in his room, so Lucy hasn't seen him eating them. But a couple of days ago he was watching a TV show downstairs and he decided to eat his chips. I was cooking in the kitchen, but then I heard an argument, so I ran out to figure out what was going wrong. Lucy was mad at Jack for eating chips and told him to throw it out because she's trying to lose weight. My son said he can eat whatever he wants. I tried to calmly tell Lucy that Jack is allowed to eat in a common space, and if what he's eating is tempting her, she can nicely ask him to put it away, or she can go to another room until he finishes if he declines her request. That just made her angrier, and she accused me of playing favorites and sabotaging her progress. This pissed me off because I've done nothing but support her these past few months. I firmly told her she's almost 18 and she needs to grow up and accept that not everyone will follow her diet, especially in their own homes. She cried to her mom, who's now blowing up my phone calling me a bitch for not supporting her daughter. My husband, her dad, is on my side, but after sleeping on it, I think I could have used a gentler tone. I found something suspicious in my husband's pocket and now I don't trust him. I'm sick with anxiety thinking about this, and I just keep spiraling the more I think about it. I could really use some outside perspective, maybe from other married men. I've been with my husband for about 2 years now. We met when we were both working at the same office. He is a couple of years older than me and I was only an intern when we started dating. In fact, he was technically my boss. My family was a little hesitant to accept our relationship at first since he is 14 years older than me, but after we got married they eased up on the judgment. Anyone can see how in love we are, and before this incident, my husband always treated me like royalty. He is the strongest, most caring man I've ever met, and the day we got married was the best day of my entire life. He treats me excellently and I really don't give a crap what anyone has to say about our relationship. That said, I'm still feeling really uneasy about everything that happened between us this week. I was doing my husband and I's laundry while he was out with his buddies, when I felt a weird bulge in one of his work pants pockets. When I reached my hand in, I discovered a string of 5 rubbers. My heart sank. We haven't used protection in years. We have even started talking about trying for a baby soon, so there's zero reason he should have these at all. When he got back home from hanging out with his friends, I confronted him with the rubbers in my hand. I had tears in my eyes and I begged him for the truth. I could tell he had had a couple of drinks while he was out, but there was no way I was putting this off till the morning. At first, my husband acted like he had no idea where they came from, but after I shoved them into his hand he said, "Oh." That's when he told me that he kept these rubbers on him to lend to his friends when he needed them. I was still pretty suspicious, so he continued and explained that he was the only married one out of all his friends and he was just trying to be a good guy by keeping them on his just in case. Nothing he said was making me feel better, and I was so close to asking to see his phone, but I never wanted to be that kind of girl. I just want to be able to trust my husband, but honestly, after this, I don't trust him. Every time he leaves the house I feel paranoid and anxious, and even though he told me all guys do this, I don't really buy it. I have no idea what to do. Is this really a normal thing married men do?
What is important for virgins to know about their first time? The hole is actually a bit further south than you would think. But not too south. It's the biggest deal in the world before it happens, and not that big of a deal after it happens. If you can't tell them that it's your first time, it's probably not the right person. It only takes one nut to be a father. The more you know, you will probably suck, may not get it up, and likely won't last long. All normal. Learn how to put a condom on. It's like cooking pasta, very easy to get right but also easy to get wrong, but the consequences of condom misuse are very serious. If you're a man, file your effing nails. No woman wants a man with eagle talons tearing her apart like a kid at Christmas opening presents. It takes 5 minutes and a lot of women are very appreciative of this. Have you ever served on a jury with someone who should never have been allowed on a jury? Yes, the only time I had to serve was on a 6-person jury in a civil case. I've written about it previously, but to sum up the case, the plaintiff was suing for lost wages and pain and suffering because she was fired after being sexually harassed and then transferred as the harasser was a relative of the business owner. It was a directed verdict as the defendant admitted in writing to what he did and didn't even show up to defend himself. I later found out that he fled the country back to his homeland. The jury was made up of 3 men and 3 women. Since it was a directed verdict, all we had to do was fine for damages. I had been roped into being foreman, and after some discussion as to how to fine for damages, I came up with the idea that we should all come to our own numbers and talk them over. Everyone did so, and when I got them back everything was generally within a certain range, but one was egregiously low. Since it was anonymous, I asked if anyone wanted to own up to the low number and the guy did. I asked if he wanted to defend it and he did. We were all ears. The lowballing juror explained that where he comes from women are not of the same value as men, and that if this even happened, remember that there is a signed confession. The man has a family and she is just a single young girl, in her mid-20s. We looked at him like he grew a second head and reminded him that this is the United States and we all have rights. As an immigrant, he should be thankful that he should be afforded the same protection as any of the others in that room and not treated differently because he comes from another place or looks different. We were finally able to get him on board, but I think it was as much him wanting to go home as it was coming around to understanding equal protection under the law. How we got through voir dire is beyond me. I looked like a goofball in a patriotic shirt, motorcycle jacket, jeans, and boots and answered everything honestly. He was much more conservatively dressed. How the attorney missed a question like, "Does anyone here think women are worth less than men and it's okay to lock them in a building in an attempt to coerce them into a sexual encounter," is beyond me. My sneaky girlfriend hid her ex in my apartment. I live in a big city in my own apartment. My girlfriend, Lily, lives with her roommates, but if I'm being honest, she basically lives over here 80% of the time. Earlier today while I was at the gym with my friend, she texted me that she had an old friend she hadn't seen in a while that's in town and that it would be nice to have a quiet place to catch up. I said they could use my apartment and that I'd go out for dinner with Mike so they'd have time to catch up. During this time, I was at the gym, so I was in a rush. I didn't ask who she was inviting over. Well, apparently I should, as the old friend she was apparently catching up with alone in my apartment was her only ex-boyfriend Kyle. Around 30-ish minutes after this conversation, I get a text from her saying they're at the apartment. I just said bed and continued with my friend. Mike and I finished our workout around 7 p.m. and decided we'd go to Whole Foods as their hot/salad bars got some great food. We ate there and finished around 8:30-ish. I'm on my way home now, and honestly, I wasn't expecting anything other than just saying hi and heading my butt to bed. It had been a long ass day and honestly, I was just ready to get to sleep. I arrived home around 9 p.m., and at this point, I had no idea if her friend was still over or not. I was secretly hoping they weren't as I didn't feel like socializing at all, but hey, I'll take one for the team. When I walked into the apartment I saw some big Timberland boots that obviously were a man's. I'm immediately like damn, her friend brought her boyfriend, I'm going to have to stay up and socialize now. I take off my shoes and jacket and start heading down the mini hallway. As I enter the living area, I see my girlfriend sitting on the couch with a man at separate ends but staring right at each other talking. My girlfriend notices me and jumps a little. I didn't really find this odd at the time, but now thinking back on it makes sense. At this point, I'm still completely oblivious. I say hello and start walking towards the man. I'm looking around the house at this point for her friend. Honestly, I just thought she was in the bathroom or some shit. I shake the guy's hand and say some crap like, hey, I'm Lily's boyfriend. He replied back in like an arrogant way with some, I'm Kyle, Lily's ex. I was like, oh, my fault, I thought you were her friend's boyfriend. Then it got a little quiet and I rapidly came to the realization that my girlfriend had been alone with her ex in my apartment for the last couple hours. I look at my girl and say, so I'm taking this was your old friend? She said yeah in a soft voice. At this point, I wasn't letting myself jump to any conclusions, but I'm tired and I don't feel like socializing. I'm also now upset my girl was just chilling with her ex in my apartment. It got quiet again and these two made zero effort to continue whatever convo they were having just moments ago. Lily asked how my day was and I was like, it was fine, I guess, again getting the vibe I'm interrupting something. At this point, I was fed up. Only a minute or so had passed since my question to her, and I looked at him and asked Kyle, hey, do you mind ending it here for today? I actually got some things I got to talk to Lily about. He said some. She invited me over though and we're still reminiscing on the good old days. I look at Lily, she can't even look me in the eyes. I look back at Kyle and say, alright, let me rephrase it, this is my apartment and I'm telling you to leave. He then looks at her and says, do you want me to leave? At this point, and I'm not proud of it, I completely lose my crap. Saying, what the F do you mean by that? I don't give a crap if she wants you to leave or not. I'm telling you to get the F out of my house. Lily is telling me to calm down and turns and tells him he needs to leave. Kyle gets up and heads towards the hallway to get his crap. I follow. And he ends up leaving. I come back and Lily is now pissed at me saying I embarrassed her. I embarrassed you? She then goes on about how my reaction is totally uncalled for as she told me he was coming over and asked. I was like, no Lily, you said a friend was coming over. Not once did you mention this friend was a male, much less your ex. She then says my reaction was bull and that I acted like a jerk. I told her you were with your ex in my apartment. Do you not understand how much of a F you that comes across as? I then asked why the hell y'all were meeting in the first place and she tells me he's going through rough times and needs someone to lean on. And that she just wanted to be there for him as he's a nice person and that by hanging with him in my apartment it shows nothing shady is going on. I explained how that was bullshit and that if my ex started having issues and I was the one comforting her, she would be pissed. She was like, no, she'd understand because she has empathy. I was like, that's bull Lily, you got pissed at me at the gym cause I smiled when a girl complimented my form when lifting. She then was like she was done talking and stormed out. I didn't say anything, I didn't chase, I haven't reached out. I just sat on the couch and thought about what the hell just happened. I then called my father who gave me some great advice. She then texted me these 2 hours ago. Can we talk? I'm sorry for not telling you it was my ex that I was inviting over. I don't want you to get the wrong idea, nothing happened. Nothing is going to happen. I love you. He messaged me out of the blue he needed someone to talk to. I didn't think that much of it, I'm sorry for deceiving you, that sounds like BS, right? I didn't think much of it then followed by sorry for deceiving you, like obviously you did think about it or you would have been truthful. I wanted to talk to him at your place because I didn't want you to assume something else was going on, please. Talk to me, I love you. I haven't responded yet, I'm leaning towards wanting to break things up with her after talking about all this with my pops. Not for her talking to him but for how I felt at the moment it all was happening. It's a huge red flag for me that she said old friend instead of ex, I still don't get it. I'm the moment of me getting visibly upset with her ex, she didn't take my side once. When I was nice before I even recognized him it felt like I was the odd man out. I just felt like she doesn't respect me. Not on some 1950s crap where the woman has to respect the man, but if the roles were reversed and I was with my ex at her house I would have backed my girl when she was getting mad. I would have called my ex out for talking CCKY to my girl, etc. My sneaky girlfriend hid her ex in my apartment. I ended it. Okay, to start, Lily had just stormed out of my apartment at this point when I called her out that she wouldn't be okay with me meeting with my ex cause they needed someone to lean on. Like I said before, I didn't call out, text, or follow her. At this point, I am furious and I can't believe what the hell just happened. I take a seat on the couch and try breathing exercises. I am trying to calm down, but it's no use cause I keep remembering Kyle asking, do you want me to leave? To my girlfriend. I didn't really elaborate on this beforehand, but that crap sent me to another world and I was absolutely about to lose my crap to the max. I just kept telling myself it's not worth it, it's not worth it, it's not worth it. At this point, all I wanted to do was unalive Kyle, and all my methods for calming down were failing at this point. I just said F it and picked up my phone and said, Siri, call old man. I honestly didn't know what I was going to say at this point, but I knew if there was one person who could get through to me it would be my pops. Now I don't remember the exact dialogue that went down, but I'm going to try my best to be as accurate as possible. Eid picks up and says, I've seen it already. Vooch dropped 43 on the SS. I started laughing a bit and say, it's not about that, dad. I just go into a huge fight with Lily, dad. I'm really pissed, dad. I don't want to do anything stupid. He says, whoa, okay, where are you right now? Are you with her? Are you guys okay? I then say, I'm at the crib right now, and she just stormed out. Yes, I am chilling, I just don't know what to do. There's a long pause after this, and I hear my pops take a deep breath and say, all right, hit me. I began to give him the same rundown I gave you guys in my last post. The whole time my pops is dead silent and doesn't say a word. I finished up the story. All he asked was, what does Kyle look like? I won't lie, this caught me off guard cause I was like, damn dad, why the hell does it matter what he looks like? I responded, I don't know, he was white with long curly hair, etc. Why? My dad was like, no, how tall was he? At this point, I'm like, what the hell, dad? I don't know, he was like 5 feet 9 inches max. My dad laughs a bit and says, explains the Timberlands then, the male equivalent of heels. I didn't realize it yesterday, but what my pops was doing was what he always does. I literally can't stay pissed if I laugh, and my dad can make me laugh on demand. I started laughing. I was like, you're right. He then was like, how much you think he weighed? I had to think for a minute, but I was like, maybe $155-ish. My pops then brought up the argument between Kyle and me. You said Lily told Kyle to leave after you started to get mad, right? Yeah, I responded. My dad pauses for a long time again and takes another deep breath. My name, I wouldn't be surprised if this situation is a lot deeper than it seems. It speaks volumes to me she only rallied for him to leave after you began to get really upset. My name, you are 6 feet 0 inches 190 pounds and were just disrespected in your own house by a man you do not know. When a woman cares for someone, the last thing she wants is for him to be in harm's way. She understood exactly what was going to happen if the situation continued to escalate, and she chose to get Kyle out of harm's way. Followed by switching all the blame to you and leaving. Honestly, son, where do you think she's at right now? I didn't say anything. I knew what he was implying. I know it hurts, but promise me you won't do anything irrational. She made her decision, there's not much you can do to change it. Don't lose yourself now over something that will just end up a tiny bump on your roadmap. I mean seriously, I couldn't be more proud of you, son. You're 22 living on your own in city, you got your crap together, that's rare. My name, you're rare, my name. The right women like your mom for me, I laughed a little, will walk into your life when you least expect it. Don't waste your energy. Everything happens for a reason, son. I paused for a minute and said, thank you, I needed this, dad. My dad laughed, of course, your mom and I are here for you always. Fast forward back to this morning. I couldn't sleep for crap last night, so this morning was just completely butthole. Lily was blowing up my phone the whole night, apologizing and begging for my forgiveness. It's around 11 a.m. at this point. I'm completely over this situation. I still haven't responded to her since she stormed off last night. In my opinion, she made her choice. However, I have a long week ahead of me, and can't have this continue to impact me this much going forward. Around 1 o'clock I got a phone call, and you guessed it was from Lily. No part of me wanted to pick up the phone, but we've been dating for 2.5 years. I felt obligated, so I picked up. What's up? I say, to be immediately met with crying, I'm sorry, my name, I love you to death. Please just talk to me. I shouldn't have left last night. I panicked. You know I love you, my name, I didn't say anything, my name, please talk to me. This isn't right, please just talk to your girlfriend. I'm sorry. I told you nothing happened, I won't ever talk to him again, please I beg, can we just talk? At this point the realization of my feelings for her started to really kick in. Instead of anger, sorrow, or any emotion, I just felt a sense of indifference when she spoke. I responded, can you come over around 3? She was still crying at this point. Yes, she said. Okay, I said, and ended the call. I'm just sitting on the sofa now at this time, just waiting for 3 to roll around. I heard a knock on the door, and shortly after I saw my girlfriend emerge from the mini hallway. She began to start smiling and crying while wiping her tears. Again, I take notice of how I feel at this moment. A sense of indifference. A feeling I don't care about anymore. It really started to hit me, 2.5 years wasted just like that. The woman who I cared so deeply for just 24 hours before now is in front of me crying, and I don't feel a thing. Lily, it's over between us, I said. Completely shocked, she barely manages to mutter out what? While still crying. It's over, I repeated. My name, my name, my name, my name, my name, no. Please, I'm sorry. Don't end this between us, I love you to death, she said hysterically. Now I won't lie, that last bit hit hard. I mean hard, man. I couldn't mask it anymore, the lid had been broken. Don't end this between us? I say. Lily, I'm sorry, I can't take this anymore. I don't know what impression I gave you over our relationship, but I won't stay in a relationship with a woman who thinks that little of me. You made the decision to end things between us when invited your ex into my apartment behind my fucking back, Lily. That is something I refuse to let slide, Lily. At this point my thoughts just begin to flow out of my mouth like a fucking tidal wave. No man is that cocky for no reason, Lily. I'm not a fucking fool, Lily. You gave him some type of reassurance to give him the confidence to act like that. You even backed him in front of me. Why the hell would I stay with someone who's not going to have my back? Absolutely bawling at this point, Lily say, I'm sorry, my name. I love you, I'm sorry. At this point, I just went soft. I didn't have the heart to keep drilling her anymore. She was just breaking down, crying uncontrollably. I just sat down in silence. My name, I'm sorry, it won't happen again. My name, I love you, only you. I won't ever talk to him again, I won't, I promise. My name, please just give me one more chance, said Lily. I'm completely silent. I mean, there was just a huge pressure on my chest, it felt like my ribcage was gonna crack under the pressure. As she cried, I looked up. And said, "Lily, please, it's over. There's no saving this." She looks at me and says, "My name." "No, please just stop, it's over, Lily," I interrupt. "Please just do us both a favor and take your things and leave, Lily. It's over, please, let's just end it here." She doesn't say anything and gets up and starts grabbing some of her things around their apartment. I grabbed a garbage bag and helped her pack. She left the keys to my apartment on the table and left. This all finished up around 4:30 today. I've just been sitting here trying to process what the hell just happened. Why do you hate children? In the US Marines, doing a mock war in the Norwegian city of Trondheim with the Dutch, Germans and other allies, training in urban combat. My infantry unit was positioned in a large soccer field next to an elementary school. Keep in mind there was no actual combat, even simulated. It was mostly just practicing maneuvers and tactics. But we still looked out of place with weapons and gear, etc. It's February. In Norway, cold as balls, snow up to our knees. Norway obviously has no snow days, so the kids were all in school. Anyway, Norway has this most delicious and amazing delicacy. I have no idea what it's called, but it's basically a bacon-wrapped hot dog. We just assumed it was called candy of the Lord. As Americans, we were naturally and instantly addicted. You find them at gas stations, and there just happened to be one on the other side of the school where we were camped. A few of my fellow Marines and I requested permission to go to the gas station, and we set out on our way. We made it to right about where the main entrance of the school was, and the doors opened. School was out. There were only a few kids, probably 6 or 7 years old. Lots of talking and laughing, gawking at us as we walked by, with our guns and huge ridiculous snowsuit. One precocious little bugger made shooting noises at us. We made shooting noises back. And then someone in my group, I don't know who, God help me, I don't know who, someone threw a snowball and hit a little girl in the leg. And those little Norwegian children unleashed hell. There was a shrill cry in unintelligible Norseman and the doors to the school burst open. School children flooded out like a never-ending flood of something that never ends. Screeching, smiling, sprinting. How the F were they sprinting? Little shits were slinging snowballs faster than the laws of physics should allow. It was like that movie Elf. If you can imagine riding in a fast car in a snowstorm and sticking your head out the window, now imagine the snowflakes that are hitting your face are the size of snowballs. We couldn't effing see. We couldn't run. We could barely breathe. Holy F. We tried to return fire and threw one, maybe two half-packed, shitty snowballs that fell apart in the air, arms flailing like drunk octopi. I am from Texas. We were a unit stationed in North Carolina. We were so outmatched and out of our element, it only made them laugh harder. We were cut off from our main forces. We tried to perform a flanking maneuver, but F me, they were fast. I think some of them were throwing rocks. My comrades. I could see them speed waddling in their huge suits back to camp like a effed up pair of white Teletubbies, under withering fire. F tactics, F me, F the candy of the Lord. This was survival. I was the slow one in the group. My snow boots were too big, but they were the smallest size they had at issue, goddammit. My Marines left me behind. I tried pulling my hood over my head and keeping my head down, no longer content to pelt my defenseless body with ballistic snow. The enemy swarmed me and dragged me down, cackling like a pack of hyenas descending on a wildebeest. I tried to sling them off by spinning. I came out of one of my boots and fell. I began to scream and plead for them to stop, but they neither understood nor gave a single Nordic F. They literally pinned me down with about 5 kids on each limb. It was then that I actually thought, oh poop, I'm really in trouble. My snow mittens were ripped off and flung into trees. They started shoving snow down my suit. Have you ever had anyone drop an ice cube down your shirt? Well, now imagine someone shoveling handfuls of ice cubes down your shirt. It literally shocked the breath out of my body. They left me laying like a Family Guy accident victim, moaning and screaming in the cold, rifle packed with snow and dirt, boot buried somewhere. They ran away laughing, jabbering in their crazy language. I lay there trying to figure out just what in the great American F had happened. What is the worst thing you have said during a breakup? She was breaking up with me, and I told her, you know you are right, and I agree, we aren't very compatible, and our relationship has been on the decline for some time. Those were my true thoughts and feelings. I felt a sense of relief when she broke up with me because I realized it was the best move for both of us. So why was this the worst thing to say? It ended up making her want to double down on the relationship. I was bombarded with non-stop texts, phone calls, and unannounced visits to my apartment. All of that. Apparently, breaking up things amicably was not how she wanted to go. 2 months after our breakup, she asked me if I missed her. I told her I missed her parents more than I missed her. I had a partner who regularly threatened self-deletion if I left. She was horribly mentally, emotionally, and physically abusive. The last time she did this, she threatened to jump off our apartment balcony. I told her to make sure to do a backflip on the way down so you can at least go out in style. And left the apartment. Unsurprisingly, she didn't do it. Shocking. I once ended a struggling relationship. A few months later I got an email from the person, and it was pages of everything I had ever done wrong in the relationship. I realized that this was why the relationship had been struggling. All these things that had been bothering my partner, and they had bottled them all up inside instead of, say, talking to me about it. So, my entire response to this multiple-page email with everything I had ever done wrong was, I ain't reading all that. My ex got her birth control taken out and didn't tell me until she was a month pregnant. Me, 28 male, and my ex, 36 female, were together for about 4 years and some change. After the first month she gets an IUD in. Now, I'm not fully knowledgeable about birth control and stuff like that, but she told me it would last 5 years until it needed to be replaced. Needless to say, that meant rubbers weren't an issue. Fast forward to last month when we're at the store buying stuff for lunch, she mentions that she's feeling a little sick and she wants to get a pregnancy test. Me being the idiot that I am just laughs thinking she's joking about, but it turns out she wasn't. I asked how she could be pregnant, and she revealed that she got her IUD taken out the month prior and didn't tell me. She takes the test and surprise surprise she's pregnant. I asked if we should take another test just to be sure, but she tells me this is her 4th test in 2 days and all of them said pregnant. Now, I'm not opposed to being a father, but when we started talking about either moving into my apartment or hers, she brings up her nephew moving in with us too. She has a younger brother, I think he's like 32 but never bothered to ask, and this guy's a mess and a half. He's had 2 sons that he ditched off on his mom, and my ex's mom has been raising them. I have no ill will towards the kid or anything, but I also don't have any love for him either. She isn't really around him enough for me to have that connection to him, but she considers him her son now. She got upset and told me I'm not fit to be a father if I can't take care of her son as well. I get that pregnancy hormones are a thing and all that, but now she's blocked me on everything, phone, Facebook, etc., and I don't know what to do. I want to be part of my kid's life whether or not me and her are together. It's a real rock and a hard place scenario for me. What was your biggest mess up when dating an identical twin? I mistook the two and said some things I regret now. Let's call the twins Chad and Charles. I had maybe one class with Charles, and we never spoke. Then, I started to have classes with Chad, and we were inseparable. He wasn't only my boyfriend, but also my best friend. Anyways, he broke up with me out of nowhere. Every time I saw him after that, he would act like a supreme asshole towards me. I never knew what I did to deserve that, but it hurt a lot. When high school ended, Chad went to an out-of-state college, and Charles ended up going to the same college as me. Fast forward to the first day of sophomore year of college. Charles and I had the same class together. It's a huge lecture hall. He could sit wherever he wants, but he chooses to sit next to me. I didn't even notice until he said hi to me. I just responded hey back. Then, he proceeded to apologize for being mean to me in high school. I was super confused, but I figured he felt bad that he stopped talking to me after Chad and I broke up. I said, oh, don't worry about that. It was so long ago. If anything, it's your brother who should apologize. My brother? He asked. Yeah. Chad was such a dick after we broke up. Seriously, fuck that guy. Now, I knew that I was saying this to his brother, but the two of them weren't that close. I doubted that he would ever tell Chad that I said that. Even if he did, I wouldn't have cared. Charles just responded with, oh right, Chad. Then, class began. We started taking notes. Charles was writing with his left hand. I thought it was odd and told him, wait, I never knew you were left-handed too. I thought it was just Chad. He just gave me a little nod, and we went back to taking notes. Later that day I asked him whether he would like to come back to my room and talk. He very bluntly said no to me. Because I can be kind of slow sometimes, things didn't click in my brain until afterwards. I rushed to Facebook and looked at Chad's profile. He had just transferred to the same college as me. I was talking to him the entire time.
My dad could swim. Today is the 2-year anniversary of my dad's death. I'm staying with my grandparents right now because, long story short, after my dad's death my mom started seeing a guy who, in my opinion, clearly prefers my brother and mom's new boyfriend, and I can't live in the same house. I love my mom, but I'm old enough now for her to respect my decision to live with my grandparents for the summer. Today was an emotional day, of course. My grandma is very sentimental, and recently she has been putting together photo albums, one of my dad, one of his brother, of me, and of my brother. Today my grandmom and I were looking through the one of my dad, the bulk of which is photos of him as a kid and teen when he lived with my grandparents, but has a few more recent photos. One of these recent photos caught my attention. See, I have JME, type of epilepsy, that gives me these occasional jerks or spasms in my arms and legs. Because of this I've never been able to go in water, so I never learned to swim. Despite this we went to the beach a lot as a family. Cali residents. The photo that stood out to me was one of my dad in his 20s, so a bit before I was born, treading water in the ocean, clearly very deep in. My grandmother told me that his brother took the photo when the two of them and their then girlfriends went cliff diving. I said, but Dad couldn't swim. She was confused and said of course he could. Did I really think he was the kind of person to not know how to swim? For as long as I can remember, on our frequent family visits to the beach, my dad had told me he couldn't swim as he was scared of the water, so could I keep him company on the beach. This had been great for me, of course, as I didn't want to be alone while my mom and brother went swimming, and we would find other games and things to do while they were in the ocean. To be honest, it had always seemed silly to me that he was scared of water. He was a marathon runner and generally very sporty person who grew up in California, so I didn't get why he never just learned, but now I realize that of course he could swim. He knew I didn't want to be a liability because of my condition, that if I thought he wanted to go I would tell him to go without me and leave me behind, so he told me he couldn't swim. He didn't think I'd ever find out what a nice thing he was doing for me, yet he still did it every time, especially today. That sent me over the edge. Thank you, Dad.
What's a harmless secret you've kept forever? My mom was a dope addict. So my siblings and I grew up with very little money and would have our mother lay hands on us. However, she really did try sometimes. Normally, she would pull her head out of her butt enough around the holiday season to sign up with a church or charity to get us a food box and some presents. However, sadly by the time I was 11, she was so far gone and on dope that we could go weeks without seeing her leave her room. Sometimes she would be completely gone from the house for days on end and we would literally starve. I entered a drawing contest at my school around this time. A miracle happened and I won a $100 gift certificate to our local mall. One day after making sure my siblings made it to school, I played hooky and walked to the mall, which was a 6-mile walk. I bought my 3 siblings some presents. After that I realized I had no money left for myself, but I decided that getting my siblings something was more important. I then had the presents wrapped there at the mall before trekking the long journey home. I hid the presents in the crawl space till the 24th. My presents were the only ones there, our mom was too far gone for anything. On the 24th, when my siblings were distracted by a movie, I snuck out and put the box of presents on the front porch before knocking and running away. I snuck back in the back door by the bathroom and heard my siblings yelling, "Someone left a box on the porch that says Merry Christmas." I had also spent the last week before winter break going door to door asking for canned food donations, telling people that it was for a food drive at my church. In reality it was so we didn't spend the whole winter break hungry. I put these donations of canned food into the box with the presents. It is to this day my most cherished memory, and a secret I have never told. What memory from your childhood makes you think, wow, we were poor? I think the time that I realized we were poor was when I was 12. My mom was working 2 jobs. She would get up in the morning, get me and my 3 brothers ready for school, drop us off, go to work. She would pick us up after school, take us home, tell us to be good and then go work a second job till 9 at night, all while taking weekend classes at a college. We got boxes of food every couple of weeks from one of the local churches. So we didn't do so bad for food. We didn't really have many toys. We ended up having a more wealthy family give us a big tub of Legos, and that was pretty much it. Couple things stand out for me as best memories. This one summer my brother took the lawn mower and went house to house for a month, looking to mow people's lawns for 10 a pop. He would start out at like 10 a.m. and come home 5 to 6 in the evening. He was 10, mind you. He collected all this money, and, when he had enough, he bought a used N64, with like 2 games. The silly thing was, we didn't have a TV to play it on. My mom was so incredibly proud. She went and worked extra hours and got this super bad cheap 12-inch TV for us to play it on. It was the coolest thing we had until way later. I think it was that same year. My mom was working hard, and I knew she was saving up money for Christmas presents. But my brother got sick in October, and had to go to the doctors. I don't remember what or why he had to go, but my mom was sad a lot. We didn't have health insurance, and what little money we did have was gone. I remember Christmas Day, hearing my mom sobbing in her bedroom, door closed, and us boys just in the living room, playing. The doorbell rang, and my mom told Me to get it. It was an old guy who lived down the street from us. He had a box of toys for us, some old, some new. The look on my mom's face was, I don't have the words. The look on his face as my mom hugged the guy and cried was awesome too. It took my mom almost 10 years to finish her degree while raising us. Her big dream finally got realized, and about 7 years ago she went to work as a music teacher. She bought her own house, new car. I can't tell you how proud of her I was. This last year was the very best for her. She had started doing wonderful things. She had started writing a book about technology in the classroom, had been asked to do a presentation at the National Teacher Conference, and had just finished her master's. It all changed when I received a call. She had been murdered. I made a classmate fail one of their classes for my own benefit. When I was in my 2nd year of middle school, 7th grade, I had an elective with this elderly computer teacher, Miss Sani. She often assigned us a lot of homework, and made our entire classes directed toward key placement and immaculate posture techniques. One day, she instructed everyone in my block to turn in the study guide she had assigned to us a few days prior, though I hadn't the faintest idea what she was talking about. When I had started to dig for it in my backpack, though, I pulled out a crumpled piece of paper, filled to the brim with unanswered questions. I had begun to freak out. Due to a recent test I had managed to forget to study for, and flunk, my grades were already less than perfect. I was, needless to say, horrible with computers. The one thing I was good at, though, was cheating. First, I went over to Ms. Sani's desk, with all the other students, and placed my, unfinished, study guide face down on the slow pile forming on her desk. Then, I made it halfway back to my desk before signaling an O. And walked back to the table, slipping a random paper from the middle of the pile into my hand. I made a slight mention of forgot to sign my name as I quickly placed the, finished, paper down on my desk, using a pencil of mine to erase the already written name, one of my classmates, from the top corner of the page. Then, to prevent the name from showing whatsoever, I quickly printed a solid, rectangular box over the erased corner, then erased that, so all that was visible was a light gray pencil box. Over said box, I wrote my name, then slipped the paper near the top of Miss Sani's pile, as to ensure that the kid who had actually completed the study guide didn't happen to see their paper with my name on it. Then, I headed back to my desk and continued with the rest of the class. The 100 greatly increased my grade, but you could not even begin to imagine the guilt I felt when as I watched my classmate gasp at their 0 as they were called to the front of the room to identify my paper, which didn't have any sort of a name on it. Eventually, we changed electives again, and I no longer had Miss Sani. Oddly enough, though, I didn't see my classmate whose paper had gifted me a 100. And, so, out of confusion, I asked one of the kids from that old class, and the current one, where said kid was. They'd failed the class by 1 point and were then currently being forced to repeat the class, which resulted in them having to attend summer school because failing Miss Sani's class had resulted in them missing an entire stretch of electives. The horrible guilt I so righteously deserved still visits every once in a while. I am 34, cheated on my wife, F38, and I regret it with every fiber of my being. I can relate to the agony and pain of the protagonist in that Reddit post. The weight of infidelity can be so heavy and overwhelming that it almost suffocates you. I know because I've been a victim of the same. I was in a committed relationship with my boyfriend for 5 years before I found out that he was cheating on me. The betrayal felt like a grenade of emotions had detonated in my heart, and I couldn't even comprehend what had just happened. Our relationship had been wonderful. We met in college and fell in love almost immediately. We cherished each other and promised to stay together forever. But one day, He changed. He became distant and disconnected, and I couldn't understand why. It wasn't until I caught him in the act with another man that everything fell into place. The shock was too much for me to handle, and I felt like I was falling into a bottomless pit. The person I trusted the most had betrayed me, and my world was coming crashing down. But what hurts the most was that he didn't just cheat on me, he sabotaged my life. He conned me out of my hard-earned money and stole my identity, making it difficult for me to get back on my feet after the breakup. I felt violated and humiliated by his actions. He had no respect for me or our relationship, letting his desires overshadow everything else. It was as if he had forgotten that we had an unbreakable bond that was meant to last forever. Every time I think about what he did to me, my heart feels like it's being ripped apart. I wanted to forgive him and move on, but I just couldn't do it. I was so angry and hurt that I couldn't even look at him. It took me a while to recover from the hurt and betrayal, but I eventually did. I learned that infidelity is not just about the physical act of cheating but also emotional betrayal. I had to learn to trust again, and it was a difficult process. I also had to learn to forgive, not just him but myself as well. I had to forgive myself for letting this happen and for not seeing the signs earlier. I had to learn to love myself and to move on. However, I've learned that infidelity is not just about the physical act of cheating but also emotional betrayal. The experience taught me to be more aware of the people I let into my life and to always remember to respect others while pursuing my own desires. I wouldn't wish the pain and heartbreak that comes with cheating on anyone, and I hope that others can learn from my experience and avoid the same mistakes. But the most important lesson I learned is that it's never too late to start over and that life can be beautiful even after the worst betrayal. I'm now living a life of joy, love, and acceptance, and I couldn't be happier.
My psychopath student tried to sexually assault his classmate, and his mother defended him when we tried to expel him. I teach preschoolers who are 4 to 5 years old, and almost all of them are very well behaved and a pleasure to teach. All but one, that is. I have a student we'll call Ryan, and I have no idea why he is allowed to engage with other kids at all. This kid is on track to become a serial killer if he keeps this behavior up. It sounds harsh, but it's true. It doesn't help that his parents are very rich and help the school out financially, and therefore the principal is unwilling to expel Ryan, despite Ryan tormenting other kids in his class on a daily basis. Things Ryan has done include: cut out a chunk of a girl's hair with scissors because she said no when he asked her to be his girlfriend. He has bitten a student many times. He has a biting problem. He swears the teachers and students frequently. Has on one occasion stomped on a girl's arm and fractured her wrist. The girl's parents sued the school for this, but Ryan's parents' money got the school big-time lawyers and won the case. These are just a few examples. Needless to say, Ryan is pretty much alienated by his entire class as nobody wants to be around him. Ryan doesn't seem to mind this, and in fact, it's almost as if he has made it his entire goal to terrorize students as much as he can. Well, last week Ryan committed an atrocity. For context, Ryan has developed a crush on a girl named Sally in his class, different girl than the other crush he had. He has been drawing her pictures of him and her kissing and even in bed together, which Sally showed me. It digested and appalled me that a 5-year-old had those thoughts. I tried speaking to Ryan's parents, but as always, nothing was done. Well, last week while out in the yard, Ryan managed to isolate Sally until it was just the two of them, and he asked her out. From my understanding, Sally said no, and Ryan got angry. He proceeded to get mad and slap Sally's behind. He then tried reaching his hands into Sally's bottoms and into her no-no square. Sally screamed and it caught my attention. I rushed over and pulled Ryan away by his hand and dragged him into my office while holding his arm gently. He kicked and screamed the whole way, but I managed to get him inside. I then took him to the principal's office. The principal seemed unamused to have Ryan in his office again. As despite Ryan's parents' money, the principal has been getting sick of Ryan ruining the reputation of the school, as many parents have complained. I explained to the principal what happened, and Ryan's parents were called in the next day to have a meeting with us, without Ryan present. His parents are just wealthy snobs. They look down on poorer people, flaunt their wealth and so on. Ryan's parents started accusing me before even hearing anything. You dragged my son by the arm and traumatized him. What kind of adult are you to use force on a child? The mother, a woman who looked in her early 40s and like a stereotypical Karen, said. Before I could even say anything, the mother continued, I want her fired immediately. And she looked to the principal, expecting his support. Unfortunately for the principal was on my side. Ma'am, your side has committed a very serious offense. He sexually assaulted a female student. We cannot allow that. What his teacher did was a reasonable reaction. The mother looked shocked. Now do I need to remind you of the school's fund? Think about whose money bought you those new chairs? The conversation lasted a full hour and can be boiled down to the mother arguing that her son did nothing wrong despite being shown the camera footage, reminding the principal of the money he was going to lose, demanding that I get fired, all while the principal and I held our ground. In the end, the mother realized that her son was going to get expelled. On her way out she told us that they will sue the school for expelling her son without reason if we go through with it. Vailp, either way Ryan was expelled. Ryan's mother contacted the principal telling him that he has made a mistake and they will bring the school down with lawsuits. My psychopath student tried to sexually assault his classmate, and his mother defended him when we tried to expel him. I must inform that Ryan's mother did indeed follow through on her word. She armed herself with the best lawyers, sued the school up and down, and tried using everything she could. One of her main goals was to get me fired for dragging Ryan by the arm away from the student he was sexually assaulting. She claimed I was unfit to teach and a danger to children. Her lawyers tried everything they possibly could too, digging through my past, going through my records at the school, but ultimately found nothing that could suggest I was a danger to children. The court overall was a crap show. It was kind of humiliating to sit there and have a lawyer rip into me about my past issues and trauma surrounding my own parents as evidence that I may be too traumatized to take care of children. I even cried on the stand while this was happening, and the lawyers used this as an opportunity to try crank down on me harder. Thankfully, however, our own lawyers were very good, and they managed to prove to the judge that we were in the right. I'm not going to go into the minuscule details about the case, but all I have to say is that the outcome was very positive for us. My principal kept his job, I kept my job, Ryan stayed expelled, and the only thing that his parents got out of this was wasting a boatload of money, as they did not get a single dime out of the school. I'm back to teaching right now, and the kids in my class are thriving. Teaching without Ryan is causing me a lot less stress day to day.
I tried to stop what I thought was a prank at my friend's wedding. My friend, Ashley, got married last night to her longtime partner, Kevin. Kevin's best friend, Frank. He's a bit of a prankster, and it's usually all in good fun. Ashley has shared there are times that Frank goes a little too far to stir the pot, but he had promised to be on his best behavior for the wedding. I had agreed to help deal with Ashley's boundary-stomping family as well as look out for any pranks that Frank might pull. Even though we knew he said he'd be good, we know Frank. Ashley and Kevin are big football fans. At one point in the night, they wanted the wedding party to don 49ers jerseys they purchased to get a few photos in. Frank is also a football fan, but is diehard for the Chiefs. There's always been some banter back and forth between Ashley and Frank over this. In the beginning, Ashley said he was refusing to wear the jersey she bought. Eventually, he gave in and said it was just 5 minutes, so no big deal. He did keep cracking jokes that he'd show up in a Chiefs jersey, and Ashley always said with a serious face, "Yeah, no, don't you dare." So, I was to assume that hey, he's not wearing it. The time came for the wedding party to put on our jerseys over our dresses/suits. The wedding party went upstairs. As I'm waiting with the other bridesmaids, I see Frank come out of the bathroom in a Chiefs jersey. I asked what he was doing. He smirked and said it was all good. I told him to go change. Again, he repeated it was all good and he had permission. Considering Ashley hadn't told me and it wouldn't be out of Frank's wheelhouse to try to pull one over on me, I said no, she didn't. Why are you trying to cause problems on her wedding day? That's when Kevin came out of the room he and Ashley were getting ready in and asked what was going on. Frank said she doesn't believe me. Kevin seemed to have a lightning bulb moment and was like, "Oh, yeah, we meant to tell you that Ashley agreed it. Was fine for him to wear the jersey, they have some cool poses planned." I said alright, apologized to Frank for the misunderstanding and moved on. I think the pictures will turn out great. After Kevin and Ashley left, I stayed behind to help clean up some stuff. Frank approached me and said I was a drama queen for making a big deal about the jersey. I said I had no clue Ashley gave him permission, and given his history of antagonizing people/playing pranks, I thought it was a fair assumption. He said it was none of my business. I pointed out that I had been put in charge of making sure he didn't pull any pranks, which he knew. Still, he told me that I should have minded my own business. We haven't bothered Ashley and Kevin with this, and I have no plans to. However, it got around some of our friends and they're split. Some say I was in the right given Frank's past. Others say I was being controlling and dramatic. Am I the a-hole?
What is that story from your school? It's a good story, but unfortunately never gained much popularity. My form tutor had a cane, was really nice, everyone liked him. One day he apparently tripped over that cane in the middle of a lesson. He wasn't very hurt, but the school still called his wife to inform her of what happened. It apparently went something like this. "Hello, Mrs. Blank. We just wanted to inform you that your husband has fallen over at work." "Oh gosh, is he okay?" "Yes, he's fine. He just tripped over his cane. He doesn't have a cane." So yeah, my form tutor had a cane and was faking his disability. After this came out, some students claimed to have seen him actually running in the local park on Saturdays, and many people had noticed that sometimes he wouldn't actually put his cane on the ground. He would just move it back and forth but never actually make contact with the ground. One of our custodians had intimate relations with a teacher. His wife, who was also a custodian, kicked him out of the house. A month later, one of the coaches unexpectedly went into a locker room after hours and discovered he'd been living at the school undetected. He was fired.
Proposals should be discussed by partners and should not be a surprise. You should know that if you plan to marry someone, this should be discussed many times during the course of your relationship. The proposal is really just a formality. You're not actually wondering if the person will marry you. You should know with 100% certainty that the answer is yes. This will save you from the embarrassment and humiliation of getting rejected in a marriage proposal. It also removes a ton of the pressure on your partner. For my wife and I, not only was getting married discussed many times ahead of the proposal, but my wife actually came with me to pick out her engagement ring. And it wasn't in some sort of cutesy or tricky way either. It's not like we were at the mall, past a jewelry store, and I hypothetically asked her what kind of rings she liked. We went to a jewelry store intentionally, with the sole purpose being for her to pick out the very ring she wanted me to propose with and within my budget. But that doesn't take away from the proposal. She still did not have an idea about when the proposal was coming or how would it be done. I proposed months later. So yes, there was still pressure to propose in a way she'd like, but there was no pressure in any other aspect. I knew with 100% certainty the answer would be yes, and I knew with 100% certainty she would be happy with the ring since she picked it out herself. It boggles my mind that people have proposed and been rejected because there were no serious discussions about it previously. Discussions about the type of proposal she definitely doesn't want should also be had. If she tells you specifically not to propose in public or at a sporting event, then don't do it.
Am I DA for telling my wife that I will not be helping with her Christmas celebration in any way, shape, or form just because she's pregnant? Just to get this out of the way, I'm not religious. I don't celebrate any holidays, despite my wife doing it every year for entertainment. She loves it, our boys love it, so I let them just do their thing. She's 5 months pregnant. The plan was originally to let her handle all the holiday celebration arrangements like decorating, cooking, preparing gifts, and the list is long. But since she's the plan has obviously changed according to her. Now she's bugging me about how I'm expected to help and shoulder the burden of the holiday celebration, since she can't do it all on her own like she used to. My response was a no. It's not just about principles, but literally, I'm ignorant when it comes to this stuff. I don't even know how to properly decorate a tree. I didn't participate with family growing up, and I sure as hell I'm not going to waste my time learning to do something that isn't important. Therefore, I don't see how I'm gonna be helpful in this situation. I told her I never signed up for this Christmas celebration stuff, and that I won't be helping in any way, shape, or form just because she's pregnant. I told her she needed to figure it out, ask family for help or something. She ranted about the kids being robbed of holiday joy and activities and stuff, but I literally don't get what she was saying. I mean, I still play with them, so I don't see what she meant by that. She called me selfish asshole, and said that I'm her partner, and should be offering assistance regardless. We went back and forth, and I flat out asked her to stop bringing it up. She's been giving me the silent treatment for days, and acting like I broke some promise I made, which I didn't.
My ex made a TikTok about me. How would you react? OG post got taken down because people dox my ex's TikTok. Please don't do that. I 25M found a Dyson Airwrap 600 hairstyling tool. It's like the Cadillac of straighteners, curlers, or whatever in the alley outside my house. Heating element is broken, and immediately posted it on my Insta story with the caption, "This could be yours, but you keep playing." My friends know I've been making jokes with this old butt meme format for years. Anyways, fast forward a week, my friend texts me saying that my ex 22F, let's call her A, made a TikTok about me and asked if I wanted to see it. For context, A and I broke up about 2 months ago. We have no contact with each other, and no direct access to each other's socials, blocked, and she already had a Dyson Airwrap. I told my friend I didn't want to see it, but about an hour later the curiosity was eating me up. What the hell was A saying about me on the internet that was noteworthy enough for my friend to reach out about it? So I caved. I downloaded TikTok, logged in, and typed in her username. After taping into her profile, I saw the first video had like 300k views, and I'm like, oh god. I tapped into the video and she's dressed up looking great, telling this story about how my cat died, and that I quit my job, acquired 10k in credit card debt, was so broke I asked her to pay for my gas so I could keep up appearances. That part was a lie, but I think she knew it would make me look the worst, and finally that I don't have the money to buy a Dyson Airwrap for some random girl. She ended it with a sassy "hope you're well, stink." It just hurts because that was such a tough time in my life, like I had no money coming in, my dad was addicted to Oxy, my cat died, the tech job market was flatlining. I've struggled with lifelong depression and poor executive function, but I've always managed to get by. It hurts even more because after I quit my job I was seriously thinking about moving from California to Pennsylvania to stay with my parents and save money, but I elected to go into debt and slough through a terrible job market so I could stay in California with her and my friends too, but mostly her. For her to air everything out like that, knowing damn well all our mutuals would see it, is so upsetting. The comments are the worst part. It's a lot of "Yas queen, we don't need broke boy" type stuff. A lot of the names I recognize too. I want to make a post or something to defend myself or take a shot at her so badly, but I really do believe it's not okay to air out people's personal lives for other people to judge without context. The more I think about it, the more I realize how abusive she was during the relationship, but also how sweet she was. I don't know IDK. So it just sucks. I feel so powerless. I'm scared to run into mutuals like parents of Reddit. How did you help your child escape an abusive relationship? My daughter is stuck in an effing abusive relationship, and I'm at a total loss on how to help her. She's 18 years old and the youngest of our 3 kids. Out of all of them, she's always been the most mature one. When she started dating her boyfriend a few months ago, I was relieved to see her with someone who seemed to match her intellectually. We even met him a few times, and he appeared to be a decent guy, polite and friendly, although easily influenced by our daughter. But over the past 5 months, things have taken an ugly turn for the worse. She has become increasingly withdrawn from us as family members, shutting down when we try to talk about her well-being or what's going on in her life, which is totally out of character for her since she used to be open and eager about sharing stuff with us before this whole mess started happening. Even my wife has tried reaching out but nothing seems to work anymore. A couple weeks ago when she came home from college for the weekend we noticed something was off right away. When we asked how things were at school or if there were any updates on friends or boyfriends, all we got were short uninterested answers followed by quickly changing topics, which was really weird since she always loved talking about herself before this poop happened. On Saturday morning as we were having breakfast together my wife tried again digging deeper into what might be causing this sudden change in behavior towards us, especially since it all coincided with that asshole boyfriend of hers. Our daughter snapped back asking us to leave her alone, which took us by surprise. We apologized sincerely but made it clear that we're concerned because seeing our daughter like this breaks our hearts, knowing that nothing can change the love and support we have for her no matter what happens next. After some apologies exchanged between us, our daughter finally opened up telling us okay fine. It's just, sometimes he gets really angry with me for no reason. We probed further asking why he would get angry without any explanation but still got nothing back from our girl until unexpectedly our son spoke up asking if couples fighting sometimes was normal. His words triggered an intense reaction from my daughter who broke into tears right away while me and my wife rushed over trying to understand what caused such an emotional outburst. Between sobs he managed saying sometimes people fight because one person wants more than the other. Confused about where this came from, since none of these topics had been discussed between parents and kids, gave each other puzzled looks while still comforting him until eventually time passed, leaving behind an uneasy calmness along with diminished trust between everyone involved. Later that night as everyone went their separate ways I knew deep down inside something else had happened between them while they were away at college, perhaps an argument sparked by unfulfilled desires leading into silence, anger, tears and loud outbursts. What do you think would be the worst death imaginable? The more I hear about cavers that get stuck the more I think that's a bad way to go. Go into a coma in your late 20s and wake up at 90 years old before your death by natural causes. Being impaled. They basically sit you down on a pole as it were. Since there's only soft tissue there you work your way down on the pole over hours or days. Rabies. I watched it. Adrenoleukodystrophy. My partner's child died from it last year. That boy went from vibrant and smart gamer child to bedridden and unable to move or communicate. It is X-linked and shows up in preteen boys as maybe ADHD, maybe autism. Soon they start acting aggressive. He'd threaten to kill my partner sometimes. At 10. Then his muscles started deteriorating. He stopped being able to walk. His adrenal glands were failing so he was taking steroids multiple times a day. He was physically unable to fall asleep without enough medication to sedate a grown man. He had to take medication to keep him from having seizures. He swelled up. He started going blind. He eventually lost the use of one arm, then the other one. His speech became slurred and it was impossible to understand him. It was impossible to know how much of his brain was left intact and how much he understood. He became unable to use a straw to drink so he had to be given little sips of drink, and it was never enough. He was 12 when he died. He wasn't supposed to see his 11th birthday but he surprised everyone. But he couldn't enjoy anything by his 12th birthday. All he did was yell incoherently and cry when he wasn't asleep. He couldn't see anything. He couldn't communicate. He was in massive amounts of pain and unable to move his body. It was brutal. What are your favorite dude just went crazy stories? My bodybuilder friend tried to kill my bully. I went to military school for my junior year of high school, and back then I was overweight, had lots of acne, and crooked teeth. I got picked on a lot at an all-male school, and some of it was really mean. Made a few good friends though, because I was funny. During the second to last day of school, I came back into my room to find the picture of my grandparents that I had, with a recording feature that allows them to record a message which they can play back, had been erased and recorded over with "Look at these fruity grandparents." The worst part was, my grandpa had passed away due to an illness. I tried to figure out who it was, and this is where I lost it. I found who I thought might have done it and then smacked him upside the head with a keyboard. He was completely confused and scared when I did that. I demanded to know if he did this, and he said no. I played it again, and he recognized the voice. It was another person in the same company. I talked to my friend Elkins about it, who was a big rugby player. He's about 6'4", made of pure, lean muscle, and highly protective of his friends. I showed him the image and he suddenly snapped and went into a rage. Wachowski. It's Wachowski, and he storms off. I follow him, and he finds this dude and his whole face goes red and he goes prime Mike Tyson in a fit of rage on this dude. If it wasn't for the 4 grown men holding him down, he would have torn that kid to pieces. One dude could barely hold on to him, much less hold him down. Took like 4 guys just to get him to calm down. Mad respect for that kid for doing that. My childhood friend went through my boyfriend's phone and found pictures of him having sex with me while I was sleeping. She told everyone, and now my boyfriend is being ostracized by our friends. Except it was my idea for him to do it in the first place. There are 3 main people: my childhood friend, Sarah, 31, my longtime partner, John, 34, and myself, 29. Sarah has had a crush on John for a long time. It's an open secret in our group that no one talks about, but Sarah has never crossed any boundaries other than some longing looks and awkward interactions. But because she has this crush, she does things such as leaning over his shoulder to look at his phone screen and doing that playful shoulder slap that people do. My boyfriend and I had discussed it and decided not to address it, unless her crush became a problem since it seemed harmless. Apparently, when she was doing that recently, she caught a glimpse of what looked like a photo of him having sex with me, so she memorized his passcode, went back later when everyone was in the pool, and went through his gallery. The gallery is full of photos and videos of him having sex with me while I'm sleeping. She took photos with her phone and then went and told everybody, except me. She said that my boyfriend is assaulting me in my sleep and showed them her evidence as well. I found this out the next day when another friend messaged me, incredibly concerned. Now people are threatening to go to the cops, trying to stage interventions, and someone even told my dad I'm being abused. I understand they're coming from good intentions, but here's the thing, it's my fetish in the first place, not his. He took the photos and videos for me. The day after our sessions, he sends them to me so I can watch them because it's better than porn for me. But nobody believes me after I tell them. They say I'm protecting my boyfriend and covering for a rapist. I don't know what to do. I'm scared that someone is going to call the police on him. I want to fix my friendships and convince everybody that I'm the one who wanted it, and that John isn't a predator. There is no text communication to exonerate my boyfriend, but I do have pages of internet history from my phone full of limp porn and sleeping fetish fantasy literature. I'm tempted to pull up my internet history and air my dirty laundry to fix this. Please help. I'm so embarrassed, frustrated, and, honestly, really fucking mad. My boyfriend faked a proposal, so I broke up with him. Me, 24, have been dating my boyfriend Andrew, 26, for 5 years now. We've had a healthy and stable relationship, up until today. Andrew has always been a prankster and make jokes with me all the time, and I do it to him too, but today he took it way too far. In the morning he woke me up at 7 a.m. and told me to wake up because he wanted to take me to the spa. I was pretty surprised cause it wasn't a special day or anything, but I was all in for it. At the spa he told me how he wanted to go to a fancy restaurant after we were done at the spa, and that he was paying. Of course I agreed as we hadn't been out together in a long time. We then got to the restaurant, we had a beautiful and romantic dinner and just a nice time in general. We were talking about a house we were planning to move into and chit-chatted about other stuff too. After around 40 minutes Andrew stood up and got on his knees and took out a box out of his pocket. My heart stopped beating. I hadn't even predicted this. We have never talked about proposal before, but I also thought it was a great time now. He did a speech about how I was the most beautiful girl in the world and how he wanted to live with me forever and ended with, "Will you marry me, my princess?" Of course I said yes. Seconds later all that excitement turned into horror. He opened the small box I expected. He put the ring in and it was a note saying, "You've been pranked." And Andrew started laughing hysterically. He continued with, "Baby, this was just a prank. I'm not ready at all to marry you yet." He was leaning in to hug me, but I gave him the biggest slap ever with tears streaming down my face. I just told him, "We're over, you scumbag." I am now sitting in my bed crying and writing this and I don't know what to do. He's been texting and calling me but I haven't responded because I feel so sad, betrayed and mostly angry. I thought this was going to be one of the best days of my life. What should I do?
My father and I were together for almost a year before he died. I can't share this with anyone in real life. I'll bury my secrets here on Reddit, forget my password, and go on with my life. I was 15 when my father was diagnosed terminal. He died before my 19th birthday. I'm 27 now and engaged. I'll be married next summer. My fiancé's 30, family is well off and treat me very well. He's got an incredible career and rich on his own too. He's also the kindest, sweetest and most loving man to me. I'm doing well myself in my field, paid very well, plus my father left me a sizable inheritance, much more than anyone else. He also bought me an acreage with a beautiful house that I moved into at 18. He still left a lot to my mom and my 2 brothers, plus a car each, and mom has the family house. My life is perfect. I have my best friend, very dear friends, and I'm very close to my brothers. I'm surrounded by people who love me. It's a modern fairy tale of a life. I couldn't possibly want or need anything more. My father was far along and told he wouldn't live to see 50. True to form, he died at 47, in the house he built for me, in my arms, just the 2 of us. My parents never divorced. They seemed happy actually, and very much at peace till the end, I would say. When I moved into my property, my father moved in with me. There was never a discussion about it. My mom helped us pack and that was it. I never really spoke to my mother very much after that. At the funeral, we hugged and that was all. We're in contact, but very minimal. My father had his own room in my house, but the first week we moved in, he slept in my bed. He slept there every night until he died. I don't know if my mother knew. She never visited my home. Father would go see her at the family house maybe once every 2 weeks or so. My brothers, now 28 and 31, came over every Sunday to mine for dinner when we were home. I took a gap year, and my father and I took trips everywhere. He wasn't lethargic ever, never showed his illness. Sometimes I would have thought he wasn't ill, and that it was a mistake. We traveled to Paris, London, Rome, Italy, Greece, and Japan. They felt like honeymoons. We had planned to travel more to Asia, but he passed earlier than expected. He was a lovely man. He was good to me. He never forced me to be with him. He just decided we were something else other than father and daughter, and I didn't object. He told me he'd die the happiest man because of me. He had no regrets, and thanked me constantly for caring and loving him. After he died I went to uni, got my degree, and a couple of years later I found my fiancé. I knew I wanted to marry him, because apart from one-night stands and very short relationships, no one else interested me enough to go further with. My fiancé oddly enough reminds me of my father. I'm not naive about what happened. I know it was wrong. I know my father played on my emotions and I know I was manipulated, albeit gently, and I know I played my part. I don't know why I feel the urge to share this now. I've never even really acknowledged this on my own to myself. I think maybe I want to speak all this to the universe, so I can start a new life unburdened. I am really happy now, and I'm very grateful for my life. I don't hate my father or my mother either. I don't know how much she knows, but I suspect at times that my father told her the truth. Maybe she didn't know what to do, so she just let it go. My mother will be at the wedding. She seems excited for it. Her and my soon-to-be mother-in-law have made it a very big wedding. My brothers love my fiancé. They'll both be groomsmen and both will also walk me down the aisle. My father will be represented by an engagement ring he bought me in Paris. I miss him so much sometimes that I can't breathe. Thanks for reading.
What's the best thing that happened to you in Truth or Dare? In high school, during a particularly boisterous game of Truth or Dare, I found myself entangled in a dare that would unexpectedly shape the rest of my life. The challenge was to play Gay Chicken, a juvenile game where two straight guys pretend to be gay and the first one to back out loses. I was paired with this guy from my class, someone I knew but wasn't particularly close to. We were both known for our stubborn streaks, and neither of us was willing to be the first to back down. As the game progressed, something shifted. Our playful banter and feigned affection began to feel less like a performance and more like a discovery of something deeper. The game ended, but our connection didn't. We started hanging out more, initially as friends, but it soon became clear that there was something more between us. Fast forward to today, we've been happily married for 14 years. We've left the hustle of the city and now run a charming bed and breakfast in Vermont, surrounded by picturesque landscapes. Our home is filled with love and laughter, especially since we adopted our daughter, who's the light of our life. She's brought an even greater joy to our lives, with her endless curiosity and vibrant energy. Sometimes, I look back at that game of Truth or Dare and think about how close I was to chickening out, how easily I could have missed out on this beautiful life. If that dude doesn't chicken out soon, I'm going to start to suspect that he's actually gay. Today I messed up, took a secret trip to buy an engagement ring. Now my girlfriend thinks I'm cheating. I've been planning on proposing to my partner for a long time now. I've got this big surprise trip planned, and I've kept it on the down low perfectly so far, until now. The last thing I needed to do was buy an engagement ring, so I went to 2 different cities to browse engagement rings, obviously keeping it a secret from her. Google Maps on my phone was logged into her Google account. Little did I know it tracks your every move and you can look at past journeys. She was looking at a recent journey she did. She works out of home and the office a lot, and saw that someone had obviously been to these different places and asked me about it. I'm a terrible liar, so I said I did go there but I can't tell her why, and now she thinks I've gone to see another girl. Google Maps royally screwed me over. I deleted my son's Minecraft world and you won't believe what he did. I'm 26 years old and a mother to 2 boys. My oldest is 10 and my youngest is 5. They both like to play video games and watch YouTube videos on their tablets. Their favorite YouTubers are Minecraft gamers. They adore playing Minecraft and I also think it is an enjoyable game. Ever since summer started my boys have been on their iPads playing Minecraft for at least 10 hours every day. They won't eat, talk to me, or go outside. At first, I thought they would get bored of playing the same game for hours straight, but they did not. This Minecraft obsession was getting concerning and I was not sure how to handle it. I would encourage them to go outside and play some soccer or ride their bikes, but they did not want to do any of that. It was 3 in the morning and I woke up to get a glass of water when I saw my youngest on his iPad playing Minecraft. This upset me deeply, so I told him to give me his iPad and go to bed. He did not listen to me. I told him again to give me his iPad but he did not listen to me. We fought back and forth, but eventually, the iPad landed in my hands. My son then began to insult me and call me horrible names. I believe in gentle parenting, so at first I tried to be patient with him and calm him down. The more I tried to calm him down, the more he became aggressive. My son then slapped me in the face and broke my glasses. I felt so disrespected and angry. So I went into one of his creative worlds where he had all sorts of different buildings and creations and deleted it. When he saw what I did, he completely lost it. He took the Apple Pencil that was on my desk in the living room and shoved it right in my ear. He shoved it in so far back that it was stuck. I immediately picked him up, ran into my car, and drove to the hospital. Thank goodness I got there just in time because as soon as I stepped foot into the lobby I fainted. All I remember was blood trickling down the side of my face as I fell to the floor. After many hours of surgery, I woke up to my ear wrapped in bandages. I began to panic because I could not hear well. Then the doctor comes in and tells me I have lost my hearing in my right ear due to a severely damaged eardrum. My mother took my sons to stay at her place while I took some time to heal and process what happened. During this time I took away all of their electronics and games. Now they are only allowed to play with wooden spoons and bouncy balls and I don't care if they like it or not. Minecraft is banned in my house. My coworker told everyone we're married, we're not even dating. Last year, I left on a leave of absence for a few months to take care of my elderly parents. Then I returned to work. Apparently during that time, one of my coworkers began telling people we were married, not as in work wife, as in legally married, and everyone believed him. Honestly, I had no idea he had any feelings for me and I don't think he knew I would be coming back. I'm an introvert, I keep my personal life private and don't talk about myself much, but the fact is, I have a husband, not him, who I've been married to for 10 years. Not wanting to cause him embarrassment, I privately went to our boss, explained the situation behind closed doors, and asked for a department transfer. Even though he's never sexually harassed me or made a move on me, I'm very uncomfortable being around him right now and don't want any contact with him. My boss agreed, said she would speak to him, and though she didn't have the authority to move me to another department, she would see to it that we wouldn't be put on a team together, and kindly offered to adjust the schedule so he wouldn't be in the office at times when I was there. I've tried to handle this whole mess as discreetly as I can, but today I lost it. He walked into the break room while I was in there, and I basically yelled at him in front of everyone there, saying I'm not his wife and to stop telling people we're married. I know this was not the most mature way to handle the situation, but I was at my wit's end. What to do? What is an experience you will never forget no matter how old you get? I have always had a close relationship with nature. Heading out fishing. Early one morning, I came around a corner of an island. I spotted a great blue heron, flopping on the water. I slowed and realized that it had a fishing line coming out of its beak. So I stopped, gathered the wings together, picked him up and put him between my knees, cut the line and he swallowed the rock base. It was really weak, almost dead, and I know in this condition, he is very vulnerable. So I took him to where I knew he would be safe, with no dogs or wild animals. I took him to a resort on the lake. The first light of the day is when I arrive at my destination. So I lifted the bird and set it on the grass, in the morning sun, to dry out and gain strength. As I walked away, the bird got up and followed me. It felt safe with me. That felt incredible. I motioned the bird to stay, gently pushing it down to a sitting position. I did this a number of times. Finally he stayed. I went fishing, across the bay, so I could keep my eye on him. About an hour later, I heard a thwop thwop sound. Turned just in time to see the heron land on the transom, back of the boat. It stepped down into the boat and walked towards me. There was no fear in either of us, just a caring connection. It jumped up on the casting deck and sat down beside me. I dropped my rod and began talking to and petting him. It was unreal. The connection was intense and totally loving. I caught a small fish and the heron swallowed it. After some time, the heron got up, rubbed my side, walked to the back and flew off. I'm not sure if I ever saw that particular bird ever again. But it didn't matter. I knew we made friends that day. To be this close to nature is an amazing experience. You can imagine how deep the emotions had to be. Nature touches me in so many different ways, every time I go fishing.
People of Reddit, what is one thing your family will never understand about you? That the reason I have found success, both personal and financial, in life is because I watched them for years and do the exact opposite. Bad part is that they seem to reward and normalize bad decisions. I turned out fine because of the years and thousands of dollars spent on therapy far away from them. That I'm bad with calling them, but that doesn't mean I don't love them to death. I just don't enjoy talking on the phone. That I am in fact funny. That I don't always want to wear my hearing aids. It's exhausting to constantly hear sounds you normally never hear/understand. That I've literally never done anything that they've accused me of over the years. And now they don't understand why I don't like to be around them. Being the family scapegoat is a pain in the ass. It makes me sad. My desire to be left alone. I love solitude.
Revenge on my mother-in-law who decided she would wear the exact same dress as me to my wedding. I was looking at my wedding photos today and thought this community would appreciate my success. It's a bit long with all the background, so go make a cuppa and settle in. My mother-in-law hated me from the moment we met. Think evangelical Catholic meets goth atheist. I moved in with her son and had a baby without getting married, and she truly believed I was the devil incarnate sent to draw her baby boy into the depths of hell. There followed years of petty microaggressions, a constant barrage of manipulation and guilt-tripping, and doing things like offering to watch the kids then pulling out half hour before, or buying the kids a puppy when we expressly said no and then blaming us when she had to take the poor thing back. She pushed over my motorbike, turned up at my work, tried to rearrange the furniture in our house, and constantly talked about God and Jesus in front of the kids and told them they were going to hell because they weren't baptized. I went VLC and things were quiet for a while. I never cared about getting married. I felt weddings were a waste of money. I'd rather have a boat or a new motorbike, but it was important to hubby, so I agreed, on the condition that it was not a church wedding. Apart from the generally problematic nature of the church, I experienced religious trauma growing up and I wasn't prepared to compromise. Hubby agreed and we started planning. 2 days after we announced our engagement, to much wailing, gnashing of teeth and general dismay, a priest arrived on our doorstep. He had been sent by mother-in-law to schedule a date for our wedding and book us in for premarital counseling. I was very nice to him. After all, my issue was with the institution, not this poor guy, and thanked him for coming and told him we wouldn't be requiring any Catholic services for the wedding. He looked sad and expressed he was a bit nervous to let mother-in-law know. I offered him coffee and sympathy, and that was the start of an unlikely friendship. I was fairly annoyed by this stunt. I talked to my hubby, who at that time was so far in the fog that he couldn't see a hand in front of his face. He didn't see the big deal and asked me to just let it go. I thought about it for a day, then told him no. We had to address this immediately or it would escalate. I understood that he loved his mom and sisters, but that their obvious contempt for me was a problem. I don't like ultimatums, but by this point I'd been putting up with it for about 6 years. I laid it out. We address it now, or no wedding. It went about as well as you'd expect. We visited and hubby tried to talk to her about how inappropriate her actions were. She screamed at him and cried, and then his sisters started on us both. Standing there, watching my hubby's heart break, my filter broke. I told them to stop, very loudly. Then, I told them that they were behaving like toddlers, that I was embarrassed by their antics and to consider this their first and only warning. If they tried anything like that again, or treated us with anything other than kindness and respect, not only would I cancel the wedding, I would tell their priest and all their friends about their disgusting behavior. If they wanted to be part of the planning, I would welcome their participation, but that hubby and I had the final say. Mother-in-law tried to speak, but I shushed her like Dr. Evil shushing Scott and we left. Hubby was distraught and I felt bad for him, but we got into couples counseling and things got better. Meanwhile, mother-in-law and the sisters-in-law seemed to have taken things on board and were maintaining a frosty civility, although I was banned from their house because I was scary. Fast forward about 12 months. Time for dress shopping. I hated the idea of a wedding dress. I hate pale colors. I hate dressing up. I hate dresses. Just everything about. The idea made me want to fake a coma to get out of it, but I'd promised my own very religious mom and brother that we could do this together. So mom, mother-in-law, Sox 3, brother and his wife all traipsed along with me to marvel at the sight of me in a dress. And it wasn't a bad day. The in-laws behaved and I found a dress that I didn't hate as much as the others. I paid for it and we left. The next day, I got a call from the shop. Mother-in-law and the sister-in-laws had ordered themselves the exact same dress as me. I told hubby and he didn't really believe it. I laughed about it for a bit, went back to the shop and ordered a new dress. This one was dark purple with black trim. And then I had the idea. I don't have a lot of female friends. But all my male friends have wives who had wedding dresses. And sometimes they say they feel sad that they spent all that money on a dress that they'll never wear again. I talked to hubby and he agreed, so the invitations went out and every person who had ever worn a wedding dress was invited to wear it to our wedding. Mother-in-law and the Seals got different invitation that specifically asked that they not wear white. Dress code was stated as whatever you're comfortable in. I wasn't there for the initial confusion that swiftly turned to rage, but my mom and brother gleefully recounted the story later. All four of them turned up in their beautiful white dresses with their beautiful makeup and hair, and were completely absorbed by the rest of the crowd. They didn't stand out. They looked exactly like everyone else. Except for my mom and brother's wife, who wore purple like me. They weren't going to ruin my day by upstaging me. My hubby, who up to that point really didn't think they would do something so vile, turned to stone that day. They had finally shown the depths that they would sink to and the last of the fog was swept away. I turned up in the sidecar of a Harley. I did experiment with riding in the dress but it didn't end so well and the shop had to make a few emergency repairs the week before, and I walked down the aisle to the Imperial March by myself. My brother was my maid of honor and his wife was my hubby's best man. Remember the priest? Well, he wasn't allowed to officiate outside a church as a priest, so he was our MC. This was the icing on the cake, because I saw mother-in-law's face light up when she saw him. Until he introduced the marriage celebrant and handed her the microphone. We had a pagan handfasting, jumped over a broomstick and walked back down the aisle to Sweet Child of Mine while our two kids played air guitar and danced ahead of us. And ignored mother-in-law and the sister-in-laws when they tried to get them to go over there. I came face to face with my mother-in-law at the door. She was incandescent with rage. She went to speak, but my hubby stepped forward, and he shushed her. Right in front of everyone. It was glorious. She didn't speak to either of us for the rest of the night. She didn't speak to us for nearly a month. And then she called one day to ask to see the kids as if nothing had happened. So I had to go, because my husband and I had one. But every now and then I wear the purple dress when I know she'll be at an event. Because I'm petty like that.
Vampires cannot enter a house uninvited. Turns out, they invented welcome mats to bypass this rule decades ago. The woman comes to the Walmart, alone, on a windy evening. The door to the box store separates for her automatically when it senses her human movements, and she shivers in the vestibule. She is very tired, but still she smiles and nods when Albert the greeter says hello, grinning with his strange teeth. She pulls a shopping cart free, and goes shuffling down the aisles, each full of every commodity imaginable, all stacked atop each other like the towers of some cliffside Gothic castle. She only has $20 cash remaining in her coat pocket. It was given to her by Sandra from the community center, who had just that afternoon also invited the woman to live in her house, now that her mother had at last kicked her out for good. Whether the money was a loan or gift is still not altogether clear to the woman. However, the distinction does not matter. Deep down she knows she does not intend to ever repay it. My spare room isn't much bigger than a closet. But this is to help you make it feel like it's yours, Sandra had announced, when she pressed the crumpled bills into the woman's hand. Get yourself a new little dresser, some sheets, and whatever else it will take. I'll help you set it up tonight after work. Sandra's kindness had initially measured over $200. Alongside the spare room, it was all such a gesture that the woman quickly realized she had no concept of how to respond, so she just stuttered a thank you, and then hugged her savior for over 5 seconds. She told Sandra that she had already become a second mother to her, who, unlike her real mom, understood addiction, and how when people stumble, they need compassion and support, rather than an eviction, and an oath to no longer enable. The woman promised not to waste the opportunity Sandra had given her, but even though she believed at the time that she had meant what she promised, before she was even a mile from the community center, she found herself detouring on her way to the Walmart, over to the park where the men in the puffy jackets are always sitting on the same bench. Soon enough, almost all Sandra's money was gone, and now, meandering through the endless Walmart aisles, stuffed full everything a human being could ever covet, the woman encounters the sheets and the small dressers, and the prices on them. She begins to cry. "Are you all right, miss?" Albert the greeter asks, mincing toward her. He is very old and his skin is quite pale, even under the fluorescent Walmart lights. Usually the woman would lie to a stranger and send him along after being asked this sort of question. But, with Albert, for some reason she does want to dismiss him so summarily. Perhaps it is the lilt in the frail man's voice, or perhaps it is just the frantic desperation of her situation. Regardless, the woman feels compelled to tell him an intimate truth. "I think I just ruined the last chance I had at a decent life," she says, wiping her nose on her sleeve, "all because I can't control myself. All because I'm a fucking vampire who just can't stop consuming and hurting people." She goes on to unburden herself to Albert, as if he was a priest, with the kitchenware aisle for his confessional. She tells him about the drugs, how it began with the cooks and other waitresses all reeking of garlic after 2 long shifts in the restaurant, how it migrated to parties on the weekends, and then to alleyways and abandoned buildings, how her mother would inspect her forearms with a flashlight and lock up her purse at night, how she went to the meetings, but spent most of it on her cell phone, until it was her turn to speak, when she would stand before the crowd and just lie. She tells Albert about Sandra, and how she doesn't even know what she is doing in the fucking Walmart since she has no money left, and will never again be able to look that saintly woman in the eyes. "Well, if you're a vampire, then I'd say you're in the right place," Albert tells the woman, stroking her back gently. "Everyone in Walmart is a vampire in one way or another, just insatiably consuming all this garbage. But, you know, maybe being a vampire is the best thing anyone can be these days. So maybe you should just stop fighting against what you really are." The woman chuckles a little. The old man is more pragmatic than she would have expected. "That's all well and good, but it won't exactly help me find a place to sleep tonight, now will it?" She asks. "Oh, I don't know about that." Albert responds, "I think if you really wanted to, you could still find a way to lay your head at that Sandra lady's place, and I think you could do it without having to ever admit your little slip-up to her. Tell me, do you think Sandra has a welcome mat outside her house? If not, this Walmart's got a lovely selection of welcome mats, and plenty of them are cheaper than $20. Maybe all it will take for you to get yourself into Sandra's house tonight is laying down a welcome mat beside her door." The woman looks at Albert with a furrowed brow. "Okay, now you're not making any sense. What does a welcome mat have to?" Albert puts his wrinkled, liver-spotted finger on her lips. He leans in and whispers in her ear. Her eyes go wide.
Want me to come back to work? Yeah, as long as you fire my boss. To give you some background on my friend Tim, he has been programming since he was like 7 years old. Tim said by the time he got to college he breezed through most of his comp sci classes because a lot of the content they were covering he had already mastered years prior. Tim is an excellent programmer. Tim's career has been quite successful. He's worked for Google, Facebook, Amazon, and finally a hedge fund. The story starts at the hedge fund. Tim works a lot with AI technology, and at this hedge fund he was the lead programmer manager who spearheaded an effort to optimize their AI that helped them complete literally millions of trades a day. To say his work had a massive impact was an understatement. All of this is going on with Virus in the background. Due to Virus they went to a work-from-home model, where my friend Tim kept working. During the work from home, Tim was looking around his fancy $4,500 NYC apartment and wished for things like a yard, a heated pool, a nice 3-car garage, and not living in a high-rise. It dawned on Tim that he could leave NYC. Tim moves to Michigan, so Tim moved back to his hometown in Michigan, where he bought himself a really nice home with a heated pool, a 3-car garage, a nice yard, and guess what the yard had in it? A mother-in-love suite, which was essentially a 2-bedroom, 1-bath second home on the property of his main home, which he turned into his man cave. It's actually pretty sick. Oh yeah, and his mortgage payment was far less than his $4.5K a month rent. Like half. Tim spent the rest of Virus work from home pounding out projects, etc. He never actually informed his employer on an official basis he moved, he just kept working. Then Virus ended. Virus is finally over, back to the office, or, Tim boss, Larry calls him up and goes, "Alright Tim, on Monday we are starting work back at the office," and Tim goes, "Yay, about that I moved to Michigan." Larry is shocked and goes, "You didn't even ask if you could do that?" And Tim basically said, "I didn't know I needed your permission to move," in a sarcastic as duck way. Larry insists that Tim needs to move back to NYC, or he won't have a place on the team. Tim says he's been doing the exact same work from home at a high level for the past year. He's willing to travel to NYC for a few meetings a year on his own dime, but he feels his quality of life is so much higher outside of NYC he has no desire to live in NYC. To which Larry said if Tim doesn't have any desire to live in NYC, then he has no desire to keep Tim employed. Now what do you think a talented senior programmer with over a decade of experience, who specializes in AI technology, is going to say to a response like that? If you're thinking he quit, you'd be absolutely right, he quit. Maintaining complex code can be hard. Now anyone that has done any programming knows that sometimes the best person to maintain the code is the person who wrote the code. There's logic, there's thought processes, there's so much that goes into programming that can be so individualistic it can be hard for someone to take over a code base they didn't write. John, CEO, enters the picture. 6 weeks goes by, when John calls Tim. John is the CEO of the hedge fund. John gets Tim to agree to consider coming back, so that's when John suggests they fly Tim to NYC and he sits down with John. Tim however flipped the switch and said, "No, how about you fly out to Michigan and we discuss this?" Tim said he said that because he wanted to establish if he was going to come back, it was going to be him, working from Michigan, and if he was going to talk his employment it was going to be done in Michigan. John agreed, and 2 days later flew out to meet with Tim. Tim sits down and John says they really need him, because he provided a lot of value to the organization and the programming team is struggling. John offers Tim the opportunity to come back with a 20% pay cut, since he won't be living in NYC, and John called it a cost of living adjustment. To which John said no, I want a 15% raise above what I was earning. John sits back and responds, the reason we pay what we pay is because we ask you to live in NYC and we understand that's an expensive city to live in. To which Tim says, you pay what you pay, and you pay it because I'm worth it. If I wasn't worth what you pay, you wouldn't be paying me. Now my first condition is if you want me back it'll be a 15% raise. John goes, and second? The second condition is I'll come back so long as Larry isn't there. John sighs, you're asking for too much. To which Tim goes, you don't need to bring me back if you don't want to. I'll be fine elsewhere. John goes, I'll talk to the partners. Tim says, my offer is good till Friday. John goes, what do you mean? Tim says, next Monday is when I'm going to start looking for work. This offer is good until Friday. It was Tuesday. John leaves. That Thursday the phone rings. It's John. In conclusion, Tim, we are transferring Larry to a different fund. He won't be working with you anymore and we are fine with giving you a 15% raise. Can we send you an offer letter for you to sign? Tim said, of course. And Larry is really gone? John goes, yes. You will never need to interact with Larry ever again. That was at the start of this year. Tim hasn't been in NYC, hasn't heard from Larry, hasn't seen Larry on any communications, etc.
Men of Reddit who proposed and she said no. What happened afterwards with your life? My mother told my father no 3 times. On the 3rd time he got wasted at a local bar and basically started pouring his heart out to anyone who'd listen. Mind you, it's a very small village in the Italian Alps and my father barely spoke Italian and no one in the village spoke English, including my mother. Word got back to my mom about this sad American at the bar, so she went to find him and she told him she'd marry him. My parents celebrated their 44th anniversary last month. She was an art major and I had just joined the army. We had been lovers since high school. I asked, she said no. She wanted to get her master's. We were friends for a while but we don't talk anymore. She works as a bartender I think now. I ended up getting married to my best friend. We've been married for more than a decade and have a 5-year-old son. We lived together for another 6 years until she changed her mind and told me that I should ask again. We were engaged for over a year and got married in 1991. We are still married, have 3 children, and are both still very much in love.
When were you in the wrong? There was this girl who I had a lot of friction with. I knew she liked me too, but I was not ready to be in a committed relationship or anything serious, so I asked her if she wanted to be in a casual relationship or a friend with benefits. Initially, she thought I was kidding and trying to joke around, but after convincing her I am serious, she says that she has never been in one and would like to take her time to think and analyze it. She tells me, she'll make a decision and tell me. 2 months pass by, not a single text from her, and I meet a girl unexpectedly and she's the most amazing person in the world. It's like it was meant to be, sparks flying and all that stuff. We start dating and this girl whom I had asked to be in a casual relationship with me texts me out of the blue. Now, it was not just a short hey or sorry I took a while. It was a full-blown essay of almost 25 lines, saying she has thought it through and how hard it was for her to make a decision. She's not that kind of a girl and we need to make some rules about it and stuff. As I read that essay word by word, I started to feel worse and worse because I would have to tell her that I am not up for it and I met someone in the whole 9 yards. I made her think about this decision for 2 months without any outcome. It personally made me feel like a real jerk when I finally told her that she was too late in making that decision and I have met someone really amazing and am in a relationship. Mainly because she would think that she was not someone worth being in a committed relationship with.